Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is November 5th, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week we have on another guest, two guests in 2 weeks in a row. We haven't done that in months at this point. So something special with that. And this week we have on from Texas State College Republicans, Shelby McElwee. Did I say that right?
McElwee. But
so bad.
That's okay. I'm used to it. 22 years of my life of that pronunciation.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing at Texas State? What do you do with College Republicans?
So at Texas State, my major is electronic media, which is essentially broadcast, and my minor is sports psychology. So really I want to go into sports broadcasting, but, you know, not opposed to anything else. And I'm secretary of College Republicans, so on exec, help run that stuff.
We just go to meetings.
Yeah.
I have no responsibility.
We should probably become dues-paying members at some point.
Please do.
I'd have to get
we want
money,
your money
at some point. But yeah, with that said, let's just get into the show. We got a lot of stuff to go over this week. And I guess, Bobby, you want to hit on the first two things real quick?
Yes, I do. So if you're from Texas, you know that this has been both a fantastically great week.
And as of today, a very sad one. But I am the type of person I like to start with the good news first. So the good news is the Houston Astros have won the World Series. It was pretty good stuff.
It was amazing. I don't know if either of you are Astros fans, but
No.
I myself have been an Astros fan since 2007. So 10 years later.
Nice.
Been waiting a long time for this. I know some people have been waiting a long time as well.
I'm glad a Texas team won.
Yeah.
That's always
me too. The thing is, most of my other family, I have lots of family in Los Angeles, so a bit of a family rivalry there. But, you know, for the city of Houston, what that win meant after having the devastation of Hurricane Harvey and the team itself, you know, losing 100 games for multiple seasons just a few years ago to finally come back and win it all. Amazing championship. You know, I was at the edge of my seat the entire game. I know we all watched it, turned it on, you know, we were watching it, and then at the end I was just so happy to finally see it. So for me personally, I was elated. I barely got any sleep at all that night. And right now I'm just waiting for my championship t-shirts and hats to come in the mail. So that'll be here in roughly 3 to 7 business days.
I wasn't too excited because I don't like baseball much. But, I mean, I saw it happen. It's good.
Yeah. Did you watch the game, Shelby?
I watched some of it. I had to resort to my phone because for some reason Fox decided to go out at my place, so that was cool. But also missed a Cowboys game because of that. I'm a Rangers fan. My papa, who is in heaven right now, would be very upset if I was anything but. So I will always be a Rangers fan. But very glad to see Houston win it, especially after all they've been through. Well deserved. So
Yeah.
And, well, you know, I guess we can stop talking about sports and get on to the rest of the story. So as to continue why we're saying that now we are entering the sad portion of why Texas is sad, and that is an event that happened just this morning. We don't have too much information that's come out, but
Don't
we
know
will
much
cover
at
it.
all.
But there was a mass shooting at a church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, which is just southeast of San Antonio, not too far away from here. I know it's only about an hour drive. I know I'm from San Antonio. Enzo, you're from San Antonio as well. Shelby, I'm from
Wimberley.
You're from Wimberley. Okay, so, you know, it really hits close to home for all of us here.
Yeah.
So far they're saying there's at least 28 dead, which if you're looking at the population of that city, that's roughly 5% of the city's population was at the church and died in that shooting. So really sad stories going on around. Like I said, we don't have too much information.
Apparently the shooter has been killed.
The shooter was killed. They said he was wearing like full battle gear. He was wearing a military uniform as well, but that doesn't necessarily prove someone's in the military or anything like that. But yeah, just really sad. Obviously, by the time you're listening to this, you'll know a lot more information than we know now. But, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in that community and the surrounding area for everyone affected.
Most definitely. The thing that I've seen about this so far is, like, this church, they film their Sunday services anyways and put them on YouTube. So they're probably recording when this thing happened. So there's probably going to be footage of this at some point. I don't know if they're going to release that.
That footage will probably never get released. Yeah. If so, it'll probably be in a courtroom. But, if the shooter is dead, I'm not sure what they could do there. But we'll probably never see that. I'd be surprised if we actually did.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I guess we can move on to the...
stuff we can actually talk
about. Definitely, I'd say the biggest story of the week, and that was the terrorist attack that happened in New York City.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was there was a truck driver who was driving down in New York City in Manhattan, and he drove through a bike path and hit and killed 8 people. Now, he was in a truck that was rented from Home Depot, and apparently, now that we've found out more about this dude, he was a 29-year-old Uzbekistani national who'd been living in New Jersey. His name was Saifullo Saipov. Great name there.
It's actually a pretty common name for people out there.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I learned something today. So he was driving from West Houston to Chambers Streets, hitting nearly a dozen pedestrians and bicyclists before crashing into a school bus near Stuyvesant High School, which is just a few blocks north of the World Trade Center, in case you were wondering where that was at. So we've actually found out a lot more about this guy ever since it happened. They originally, right when the story broke, witnesses said that he was screaming Allahu Akbar, so the religion of peace has struck again. They also said he got out and started shooting at people. However, it turned out to only be a pellet gun and a paint gun, so luckily no additional people were hurt after he crashed the truck. But this is kind of, sparked a nationwide debate, I should say, once we found out more about the guy's past. And that specifically was the fact that he was part of the diversity visa program.
Yeah.
Which you know a lot about. I'll let you describe what that is.
Well, what the diversity visa program is essentially it only serves the purpose of adding nationals to the country to represent all the various different countries in the world. Like, all its purposes is to increase foreign nationals in the country for that stated reason. This it was initially it was under George H.W. Bush they signed this.
Yeah, it was signed into law as part of immigration reforms in, I believe, 1991. But this specific program was championed by Chuck Schumer. He was in the House of Representatives at the time. So I know people on Twitter were like, he wasn't in the Senate at the time. I'm like, no, he was in the House. And he still wrote the thing. But, you know...
it was fun arguing with people over that.
Yeah, and like I said, this has sparked an entire nationwide debate about should we even have this program? What should we do going forward? Are we vetting these people enough? All that sort of stuff. And, there's been some polls that have been released regarding the diversity visa program that they have here, and it actually shows that a majority of Americans want that program to be eliminated once they found out. This was done by Pulse Opinion Research. 56% of Americans said that they should end the diversity visa lottery program, and it gives out, about 50,000 visas a year for the sole purpose of making sure that, quote-unquote, every country is represented in who in the United States
to a greater extent.
To a greater extent. And what's even worse is 33% of Americans said that they should keep the program. 11% were unsure. So 56 to 33, that's a vast majority of Americans doing that. So from that alone, it appears that majority of Americans do seem pretty united in the fact that they think that we should get rid of this program.
Yeah, and then you look into some of the other aspects of it, like, this isn't even the first terrorist that was ever even allowed into the country under this program. So I was, looking into the stuff about this. Back in July 29th, 2002, we let in an Egyptian immigrant, Hesham Mohammed Hayadayet, and he ended up killing 2 Jewish people at the Israeli airline counter at Los Angeles International Airport. So this is not even the first time we've had victims because of this program that shouldn't have happened because we didn't need these people here in the first place.
Yeah, and not only that, roughly 30% of all the people that were led into this, or were led into the United States under this program, come from countries that the U.S. has designated as terror-sponsoring nations, such as Afghanistan, Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Syria, Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, Yemen, and Uzbekistan. So I don't see any need for
who's who of like great places to take people from.
Yeah, every single country I just listed is somewhere that I have on my bucket list where I want to take a nice resort vacation to, especially Somalia and Iraq. You know, perfect places, you know, the best of the best of people that we should be letting into this country.
I would actually be interested in going to Uzbekistan, but that's just me. But, like, you know, it's been a big controversy all week. Like, should this program stay or not? And it's funny that, you know, they've been saying, oh, Trump's just trying to politicize this incident. Like, why wouldn't you take action after an incident happens? They're only mad that he has, like, just cause now in the public's eye to do so.
Any other Republican in that office would have just given the same, we're so sorry, you know, thoughts and prayers for the family members. You finally have someone in there who has a gut that can actually go ahead and do things. Like
Did you see when Chuck Schumer went on TV about it?
What did he say?
He was just like, well, when, you know, the 9/11 events happened or whatever, George Bush didn't look to politicize the incident like Donald Trump is. And it's just like, dude, okay, the guy came to New York under a program you co-sponsored, and there's people that are your constituents that are dead because of your actions. You're not a guy to be talking. It's funny, you know?
And, you know, if you want to talk about politicizing a tragedy,
Exactly.
every single time there is a mass shooting, I mean, even the thing that happened in
Already
Sutherland
talking
Springs
about it.
this morning,
Yeah.
the left is already going after it. And, you know, this is part of the reason why the right loses a lot of times, is because we don't politicize tragedies. Now, a lot of people on the right say we shouldn't do that. I say, no, we absolutely should. I mean, we're already going after the diversity visa lottery program right now. Trump has called on Congress to end it. And if that poll showed that 56% of Americans want to get rid of it, that's going to put pressure, especially on the midterm elections coming up. You know, I bet you more than one person is going to get asked by their constituents, where do you stand on this program? And if their primary opponent says, I prefer to get rid of it, versus your incumbent that's not really liked is saying, I want it, who do you think that's going to help or hurt their chances running?
You know, especially since, like, there's a lot of close House races in New York right now. They should be asking that question there. And they should be asking that during the primaries, too, because there's some Republicans that need to go out there as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of Republicans
There's plenty of Republicans that need to go out all over the place.
But, I mean, in this local area, I mean, if we get around to seeing some of the representatives that are running for re-election and their primary opponents, we've met a few already, I would like to ask them their opinion on this program just so I can judge and see where they're at.
Yeah.
But, you know, it seems to me that the left has actually lost this narrative already.
Yeah.
Because when it first came out, especially once we found out that it was under Chuck Schumer's program, you can't really claim that, these are good people. I mean, they said that the suspect's mosque was being monitored for possible, jihadi recruiting terrorist activity.
Extremist activity.
Yes.
And who told them to stop
And
investigating?
it was Linda Sarsour who convinced, I believe it was it the New York City mayor or whoever it was. She convinced New York City mayor to
Cuomo.
Cuomo to just she convinced the mayor of New York City to say, you shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. This is racist.
Yeah. She's a champion of women's rights.
Oh, yeah, she's absolutely a champion of women's rights. That's why there's women that are dead because of her actions, too. I mean, I'm looking for any possible reason to get her locked up. And, you could say aided and abetted a terrorist. She definitely aided him by getting them to stop monitoring him. So why not throw her up for that? Just give her all that in the kitchen sink. But I believe there's also some research that came out on the terrorist attacks that I think you wanted to cover, Enzo. Is that correct?
Well, I did want to touch on one thing that, just discussing with you over the week that was really, made apparent this week, first off. And that's just immigration's a religion at this point.
Yeah.
You have to have faith in immigration. You have to have the faith that anyone from anywhere in the world comes here only with the goodness of their heart. And not only do you need to believe that, you need to believe that they're better than you. They're coming to do the jobs that you won't do because you're too lazy. This is the narrative that's always thrown in our face. And even when we see, the negative repercussions of, immigration, we still need to pay piety to the faith of it.
And not only that, but, we talk a lot about the show, but that if you do want to actually let immigrants in, they should be, the best of the best, people that are good, people that are going to contribute.
It should be merit-based.
That is the entire opposite of what the diversity visa lottery program is. It is
Exactly.
literally a lottery. Whereas other countries, people will sign up, got to do a bunch of different stuff, all these papers. The diversity visa lottery, you sign up, you're put on a list, you're chosen literally at random.
Yeah.
So good people could be let off, and the worst of the worst who just happen to actually sign up can be let in as long as their number gets picked.
Well, we know that the left doesn't care about actual diversity except for diversity of color. And
Oh, that's right. We've talked about diversity of free thought. If you remember back when you had, I think it was James Damore, the guy from Google. Was it Google?
Mm-hmm.
I believe, yeah,
Yep.
From Google back during the summer. He got
He wrote
fired
the
because he was talking
manifesto.
about, hey, there's a lot of diversity of color here at this company, but there's no diversity of thought. Everyone
Yeah.
here agrees the same. And I say, I personally view diversity of thought much, much better than diversity
Absolutely.
of skin color. I don't think that's even a controversial statement to make.
It's not.
But if you're trying to, quote unquote, diversify your immigrants by just say, why bring in a bunch of rich people? We should bring in some poor people. Diversity, fam. I don't think that's a good idea at all. So any efforts that Trump makes to get rid of the diversity visa lottery program, or any efforts that Congress makes to get rid of this program, I'm completely on board. And I assume most of us, all of us in this room are as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely.
I personally stand on now you do as well, and so I'm not sure about you. We personally want to see as little immigration as possible, so
I'm okay with
that
that.
fits our narrative as well.
Yeah.
But it continues, and the point, I believe, we've already made it. So I don't know if either of you want to say anything else on this topic.
Well, I think that the first step is very apparent in this, and that we should have stricter background checks on rental cars.
Of course. Yeah, everyone who goes to rent a car at Home Depot.
Home
there
Depot's
definitely
going to
should
at
be-
least be doing that.
And he rented it in New Jersey, too, so maybe we should talk about renting cars across state lines.
Yeah.
My family's done that. So, but
Honestly, I didn't even know you could rent a car from Home Depot, so I learned that today.
you rent a truck.
Rent
Rent a truck.
a truck.
So,
ban trucks.
yeah, we definitely need to ban trucks, and that's what we should definitely be looking into do. Right, Enzo?
I've read articles where they've been saying, we need to get rid of, cars in major cities so this stuff won't be happening anymore. That'd be, in addition to, we're stopping, harming the environment and stuff. But, yeah, people are actually talking about that. It's funny that you're even mentioning that.
And was there anything else you wanted to say about this? I think there was.
We
right?
have some more, but I don't think we need to really get into it. I guess the last thing I could mention is some affiliates of ISIS have responded how Cuomo responded. Cuomo, being the mayor of New York City, Andrew Cuomo, and he was saying we need to stand together in solidarity against these lone wolves, and they really laughed at the idea that lone wolves are doing this because it's part of a network. They always say lone wolves because they don't want the public to be afraid that there's actually people conspiring against them, but there is, and that has to be said. So they issued a little response on some posters they made. Said, "Oh, worshippers of the cross in USA, our lone wolves will come to you from where you do not know, and we will terrorize you wherever you are, and we will show you multitudes of terror and pain that you showed to the Muslims, and what is coming is more bitter and greater." So, yeah, they're sending their lone wolves out. Their statements against these lone wolves doesn't matter at all. It's irrelevant.
No, and especially when you talk about the fact that the guy came here in 2010, so he's been here a while.
Yeah.
And he didn't assimilate, obviously.
Of course not.
So,
But yeah, I don't have anything else to more say on that. You want to go into the next thing?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go into the next story here.
So this is what I thought was going to be the biggest news of the week. This came out on Monday, and that was Manafort was charged with conspiracy and money laundering as part of Mueller's probe, the Russian probe or whatever. Do you have some more specifics on that, Bobby?
Yes, so he and Rick Gates, who was working for him as well, his associate, they've now been indicted by the federal grand jury on 12 counts, according to the special prosecutor counsel's office. They said that the counts include conspiracy against the United States, which could be anything, conspiracy to launder money, unregistered agent of a foreign principal, false and misleading foreign agent registration statements, false statements, and 7 counts of failure to file reports of foreign banks and financial accounts. So, this is the first indictments that came out during this Mueller's Russia probe, and we talked about this last week.
We expected Manafort was going to get it.
to be Manafort, and if anyone was going to get it, it was going to be Manafort.
I mean, they raided his house a month prior.
Yeah,
so.
and Manafort's not even a Trump guy, so
he's not even a Republican.
No, and
he's worried both sides.
And if you're worried that this is going to come back to Trump, it's not.
It's not.
Especially since it was Manafort. If it was anybody else from Manafort, maybe be worried. Manafort was the fall guy. He was always going to be the fall guy, and we expected him to be the fall guy. So the left gets their have their little get the.
And Manafort was barely part of the Trump campaign. He was only on for the RNC, and he wasn't made campaign. He wasn't in charge of the campaign. We didn't have a campaign director at that point. He was just a chairman, part of the campaign board. So. They only brought this guy on to be a whip for the RNC.
Yeah, just to make sure that the delegates there
they're not arresting him for things that he did during the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with Trump, Russia, or anything of the sort. And they really hoped that it was going to be that way on Monday, but it turned out the way we expected it to.
And what also seems to be turning out the way that we expected it is that there's a lot more in those indictments as well. Specifically, there are sources that claim that the Podesta Group and Mercury Public Affairs are the 2 unnamed companies in the grand jury indictment of Paul Manafort. They are referred to as Company A and Company B. So it's believed that those 2 are part of that. And if that's so, then that means that Mueller's actually investigating the Podesta Group as well, which would make sense since Tony Podesta resigned from the Podesta Group just a few days ago, right after Manafort was arrested. So, people are kind of scrambling to do some stuff right now. And there actually is a really good thread that someone wrote on Twitter from pretty reliable source. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this entire thing off. It's a little bit lengthy, but, we don't like to report on things in the show that aren't true. But this is one narrative that I think made a lot of sense. And if it is true, could be the best thing to ever happen.
Yeah.
All right, ready? So this was written by a man by the name of @Draw and Strike on Twitter. You can read that at DRAWANDSTRIKE. So this is what he says. This started either before Trump announced his run for president or soon thereafter. Someone who knew what happened told him. Someone in the IC, likely military intel, sat Trump down and laid out the entire Uranium One bribery scheme. How all across the breadth of the Obama administration, people in high offices took massive bribes to facilitate the sale of uranium to Russia. It involved so many people, it compromised so many agencies, the people who did it counted on it never being exposed or prosecuted. The lengths to which they corrupted our government officials to enrich themselves by selling out our country virtually ensured that they'd walk. People knew, but nobody could talk. The people involved in the scheme were at the highest levels of the American government. So patriots in our government had their hands tied. There was nothing they could do to stop the sale. Even after some of the dirty facts behind Uranium One became known in 2015, it was easily buried, ignored, and passed by. Somebody took a chance on Trump. They sat him down, walked him through what happened. Ponder the impossible task being revealed. Even if he wins the election, he'd be taking over a government that had been corrupted and compromised by the previous administration to a degree that was almost unfathomable. How do you go about restoring the U.S. government to what it should be instead of what it's become? And Trump and his advisors came up with a plan, a brilliant plan, an intelligence operation based on deception. It started during the primaries when Trump began taking every opportunity he could to brag about what good friends he'd be with Putin. Trump literally could not seem to shut up about how awesomely awesome his relationship with Putin was going to be.
It's good stuff.
It became a running joke, a campaign feature. This guy spelled this wrong. Engendering much hand-wringing and concern among never-Trumpers, including me at the time, referring to the guy who wrote it. Why does Trump keep going out of his way to incessantly brag about the sweet, sweet deals he and Putin are going to do together? But go back and look. During the primaries, during the general election campaign, what happened every time Trump did this Putin act? He literally trolled all the people who took dirty Russian money to compromise our national security into attacking him for it. And all the while all he was doing was talking about something he hadn't done yet and would never actually do. Literally every single time Trump talked about his good friend Vladimir, Hillary had to remind him that Putin is not our ally. Obama condescendingly chided Trump for his friendly talk about Putin. Eric Holder, was aghast. Loretta Lynch was stunned, etc. They fell right into his trap. He talked about doing deals with the guy that all of these traders took bribes from to sell uranium to. He's talking about hypothetical deals with Russia, and people who took massive Russian bribes on the Uranium One deal rushed to attack him for it. What possible excuse are they going to have when the truth comes out? They're not going to have one. He made sure of it. Everything Trump does is calculated for effect. If you read The Art of the Deal, you know that is true. Mm-hmm. Everything he does. Mm-hmm. So you know why he showed all that Putin love during the campaign. The traders had no idea what he was really doing and rushed to attack him for merely talking about deals with Russia. Then Trump won the election. He and Sessions went to work. Now here's something people overlook or don't understand. Pay attention. All this stuff about Uranium One that we're now just finding out, Trump and Sessions knew about all of this before they were sworn in. Part of the intelligence operation Trump and company are running is you never show what you know. You keep your enemies in the dark. And he talks about that all the hand. Never show your hand. Okay? Yeah. Trump and Sessions knew all about the deals of Uranium One before the election. Who got how much, from who, all of it. How much uranium was being shipped to Moscow, who facilitated that shipping. They already know all of this. They just haven't talked about it until now. They pretend they are just now becoming aware of some of this stuff. There was no way they were going to come into office in January and tip all these people off that, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to go after Uranium One, of course. Not going to happen. Trump and Sessions know what happened with Uranium One. All the dark and dirty deals. Start with that premise. Replay the last 9 months. You need to start an investigation where somebody deep dives into Uranium One, but you can't let anybody outside know about it. So here's where the second part of the intelligence operation begins. You convince people it is Trump and his team that are actually being investigated. All the traders who facilitated the Uranium One deal were on high alert after the transfer of power. Will they be sniffed out? Well, not to worry. Almost immediately, the new president, his team, ended up being embroidered in a very public scandal. Trump asks Comey to back off of Flynn, then fires Comey, who leaks memos to the New York Times and demands appointment of a special counsel. With a president who bragged about doing deals with Russia, an advisor caught on the phone with a Russian ambassador, everybody agrees, yeah, it's a great idea, appoint Mueller. Let's appoint a special counsel to investigate the Russian interference in our election. So be it. Jeff Sessions then recuses himself from the Russia investigation. But remember, he already knew everything anyway. Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein then appoints Bob Mueller and tasks him with investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election. Mueller and Rosenstein both already know that Trump and Sessions both know all about the details of Uranium One.
Yeah.
Got that? Mm-hmm. Everybody involved in this already knows. Everybody was in on this from the start. Trump, Sessions, Mueller, and Rosenstein. A lot of scenarios go wrong because they start assuming Trump was clueless, didn't know any of this, Sessions didn't know either, or was part of the Uranium One cover-up. Same with Mueller and Rosenstein, who many assume to be dirty trying to hide the evidence. An intelligent operation based on Inception calls for putting the enemy at ease because they don't understand what you're really doing. So, what do the Uranium One traders and the DNC media and Democrats think has been going on for the last 8 months? Trump has been staggering on the ropes in desperate trouble trying to avoid a knockout blow as Mueller relentlessly stalks him. All the people are like, it's Mueller time! All the lefties on Twitter like to claim. But the reality? Trump has been digging even deeper into the Uranium One and into Fusion GPS and the Trump dossier. He has found Russian interference in the 2016 election. Do you know what it is? Shall I tell you? He found a massive Russian bribery scheme involving one of the presidential candidates in which she compromised U.S. national security. He also found this self-same candidate illegally funding solicitation of info from Russian government sources to smear the other candidate. And to compound that offense, this candidate also tried to hide her funding in this dossier by using a law firm, Fusion GPS, which is illegal. The investigation is mostly over. Most of the indictments from the grand jury/juries have been made and sealed, meaning the names are blacked out. You're all about to witness something that was deemed to be an impossibility. A previous administration that was so corrupt across so many agencies with so many people involved, it made it look invincible. It's about to be rolled up. Dozens of people are going to prison, and you know most of the names. Not until the hammer actually falls and all the indictments are unsealed will most people figure out what Trump and his team did. The DNC media never had a chance to compromise/thwart the investigation of Uranium One and Fusion GPS because they fell for the cover story. It's literally too late at this point to stop what's coming. That window closed weeks ago. Examples will be made out of these people. When Trump and Sessions are done, no one will ever try this kind of treason again. So that's what this guy said on Twitter, and a lot of that does seem to be happening.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I also want to bring up, there are a lot of rumors circulating in D.C. and New York right now that Tony Podesta, who is the head of Podesta Group, has actually turned himself into the FBI. There's a lot of chatter that that's going on. There's a lot of chatter that that was going to happen over the weekend, and then it continued into the week, so it's possible that that has happened. And a lot of people are saying that the other two sealed names in the indictment are going to be released tomorrow, which is next Monday, or possibly Tuesday. So there's going to be some more work in this week, which would make sense because if all this stuff goes down, Trump's out of the country for the next 12 days. Mm-hmm. So his hands are clean in this business. He's like, oh, I'm just letting Mueller do what he did, dude. I'm out of the country right now. So it does line up perfectly. Obviously, the chances of all that being 100% true is probably pretty low. But a lot of it does make a lot of sense if you really start to go back and think about it.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people knew that this deal happened. I mean, you know, that's like the basis of the book Clinton Cash. But like, now the government is, through the Mueller probe, is forced to look into it when they otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, and if you've...
I mean, the plan was Hillary wins, so then they just don't look at this.
Right, and Speaking of Hillary herself, she's been completely silent the last 4 or 5 days, ever since Manafort got arrested, especially since Tony Podesta stepped down. Complete silence over there. And you're even starting to see some Democrats in Congress are actually calling for Mueller himself to resign from the Russia probe. Think about that. And the same people that were pushing so hard for him to be there. Because I think a lot of the dirty little secrets about what's actually going on right now with the Russia probe and Mueller are starting to get unraveled to different people in Washington, and they're starting to get freaked out big time right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this has the potential of just eviscerating the DNC to a level we can't even comprehend.
I mean,
right
imagine
now.
if the two...
If the media doesn't run water for them like they always do.
Yes, but if the two final names of that document or the indictments get unsealed and one of them happens to be Hillary Clinton or someone high up in the DNC, there's no way that they can ignore the story. It's going to be top news story in every major source. You know, Fox isn't going to let it down. Breitbart's not going to let it down. Drudge is going to have it at the top of the page for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
There's no way that they're going to be able to ignore it, especially when people start getting arrested and put in front of juries because of indictments.
Now, there's been a lot of talk that Sessions has recused himself once again over the Uranium One deal, but you have reason to believe it's not
The
so.
Department of Justice says that he actually has not recused himself right now. And honestly, I don't think it would matter at this point. Especially, I mean, if what I just read was true, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
If what I read was false, then it probably would matter. But yeah, I don't really care. And I hate to say that, but it's kind of true. You can always unrecuse himself. That is true. It would look bad. But if Sessions did recuse himself, especially since he knows how guilty these people are, it wouldn't make sense for him to recuse himself. He would have to have someone going after it. That would either be Rosenstein or Mueller. And if Mueller's digging into that stuff, you know he's got to be looking at least some of this Uranium One stuff. Because if he covers all that up, Mueller's gone. Like, that's it. Why would Trump keep Mueller on? He could fire him at any moment.
Yeah.
Why would Trump keep him on this entire time? Trump knows that he's innocent in terms of Russian, influence.
So it's kind of it's fun because he can take the blame for all this stuff and the public perceptions for his covering for the investigation to actually do what it's actually doing now, which is going after the Uranium One deal.
And think if even some of that is true, think about how, I want to use the word butthurt, but it's going to be even more so than that. The left is going to be when they're expecting Mueller to take down Trump, but instead he takes down half the DNC.
Yeah.
The DNC is imploding right now.
Oh, yes, it is.
And we got some more fun stuff.
We cover that every week in the show, but, Trump was always like, lock her up, everyone chanted. A lot of people do want to see that happen. Trump knows uranium, he knows she's guilty for Uranium One. And that he's not going to jump at the, he would jump at the opportunity to try to take her out, or take her down, I should say.
Yeah.
Because of that. So Sessions recusing himself because of that, it just doesn't make any sense. So I personally believe the Department of Justice in saying that he hasn't recused himself, but even if he did, then that to me would actually kind of point towards what I just read as being the more accurate story, saying, Sessions is like, hey, I'm not the one who did it. This was part of the Mueller probe, dude. I didn't go after Hillary myself. Don't point fingers at me. It was Mueller this entire time.
Yeah, well, we're just doing what the Democrats wanted us to do, and appointing a special prosecutor.
So, but all this really comes out as to who are the two companies, A and B, in that indictment that are still sealed, and who are the two final names that are still sealed. Because if one of them ends up being either Hillary Clinton or John Podesta or someone high up in the DNC like that,
things are going to start falling.
Things are going to start falling. They're going to start falling fast, and it's going to be a very, very couple of fun weeks in Washington. I'll tell you that.
There'll be a couple of fun weeks on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. We'll start.
This past week, after all of this is happening, you've started to see people like Elizabeth Warren and all these people started to turn away from Hillary Clinton and start to throw her under the bus. So something is happening because they're all trying to disconnect themselves from her, and the DNC is just going to crumble.
And I believe it was Elizabeth Warren. Well, this is another story we're going to get to later in the show. She was asking about she was asked on TV, I believe it was on CNN, Anderson Cooper. She was being interviewed and asked about if she knew about, rigging the primaries. She's like, yeah, I knew about that. Obviously, we're going to talk about that whole story with Donna Brazile.
And she still endorses Hillary Clinton over Sanders.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right, Shelby. All these people, they all knew. And they're all starting to get, little whispers are starting to float around Capitol Hill that this type of stuff is actually what's going down. And they're like, crap, how do I make sure I'm not involved in this in any way? So
these people deal in the political battlefield of lies and deception. Of course they're down for the cause. We're going to get into this later when we talk more about the DNC, but the DNC was so on the ropes with money for the past couple of years. They were completely okay with getting dirty money to fund it. Anything that can help them have a chance of winning.
Especially since they assumed so bad that Hillary was actually going to win this thing.
Yeah.
That's really what it all comes down to.
Everything was betted on that.
Yeah, it all came down to, it's okay that we're doing something bad because no one's ever going to find out.
Yeah.
And then the unexpected happens, and they found out, and so they're just trying to cover their tracks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we all know about this stuff. Especially since that stuff started coming out in 2015, and they threw it under the rug back then and say, "Oh, this is just gotcha journalism. This is fake news. This is it's from the fake websites. Don't believe it's from Infowars. Don't believe anything they say." Then come to find out, most of it's actually pretty true. So like I said, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, and I think the fact that Trump is actually out of the country right now really, really helps him. He can just say, like I said, he can take a step back and be like, this was Mueller, not me. If Sessions did recuse himself, he can be like, this is Mueller, not me. So that really helps him a lot. And then he can come back to D.C. and be like, all right, guys, it's time to clean house. So,
yeah. But with that said, you want to move on to the next thing that we have?
Yeah, so this next story...
This happened while we were recording this week.
This has happened while we were recording the midweek podcast, which was, we covered the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
We covered facts of the story, including conspiracies behind it, possible conspiracies, that is. And
we looked into some of the 2017 document releases. It was
and we looked at
real
possibilities,
solid 2 hours.
Possibilities of who was actually behind it. Great podcast. If you haven't listened to it, I suggest you go back. You're gonna love it. But while we were recording that, Trump's Twitter account was taken down for 11 minutes. Now, Twitter says that this was because of a disgruntled employee on their last day of work. So, of course it was. But, other than that, there's really not too much more to the story other than the fact that, look how much power a single person at Twitter has. That they can just shut down the president's Twitter account anytime they want. They can just, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
And completely, no platform, the president of the United States.
But
or any person, for that matter.
But, it's kind of fun because you look at how it was on Twitter. They were celebrating, Trump got banned. It's a fiesta. It's great. We don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. But, Twitter doesn't want that happening.
No.
If the president left Twitter, it would destroy an already failing company.
They're already not making profit. Their stock price continues to go down. I mean, if they were to ban Trump, their stock price will go down 50% the next day, no doubt. I mean, if you really want to make some money right now, what you should do is befriend one of the people that has the power to do that, short sell the stock, have them deactivate his account permanently, then bank on the money that you just made off of it.
And then hope no one finds out.
And then hope no one finds out
that you did that.
And that's the whole point, We're using the same mindset that the Democrats had.
Yeah.
Do something bad. Hope no one ever finds out. But yeah, they said that it was just by a single employee on the employee's last day. They're conducting a full internal review, which means no one's ever going to get in trouble for it. Trump didn't really say anything. I mean, I think he released one statement about my account got taken down or something. I don't even know. It was only down for 11 minutes. But even then, the left just celebrated. We finally took out Trump.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So,
but imagine this. There's alternatives to Twitter. Gab AI
Right.
is probably the most prominent one. I haven't really used it much.
I use it.
But say Trump's just well, Twitter, you guys don't want me on there. I'll just take my talents to Gab AI. He goes on there. He already has a designated account on there.
Gab.ai has an account reserved for him in the case that he does actually join.
And he has how many followers?
42 million?
Yeah,
41 million? Somewhere around there.
Everyone's going to go on there to follow the president. I mean, I hate clicking on his tweets and then reading all the responses, but I mean, people still, people live their lives just to do that. So hey, you take it on to Gab AI, it's an open platform. There's no censorship or anything.
And I like what
it changes, how we can deal with these things.
Right, and I like what you said there. People make their entire lives off of responding to Trump tweets.
They do.
Mean, there are people
they sue when they get blocked.
There are people who literally make their living off of just being trolls to Trump tweets. They gain so many followers, and
they could lose their income. It would be awesome.
That's part of the reason why when Trump started banning people blocking people during the summer, they were like, I'm suing you because, not because you're denying my free speech, because that argument just goes out the window, because of loss of livelihood. Because that's how they make their money, is by responding to Trump tweets. You can't do that anymore. You're out of a job. There are people who have thousands and thousands of Twitter followers simply because they just talk smack about Trump every single time he writes anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who, if something bad happens, they'll be like, my condolences to the loss of someone for whatever, and they'll reply fuck you, okay? Mm-hmm. That's the type of people you're dealing with here. Of course, these people don't deserve, anything really, but yeah, that's really all
it was interesting that this happened. I was surprised when we stopped recording and I saw this.
The fact that it was back up by the time that we were ready, or by the time we'd finished. So that was one of the few stories that, I try to be almost religiously addicted to the news myself, and even then I was by the time I even saw it, it was back up already. Yeah. So, what are you going to do at that point? But that's really all I have to say about Twitter blocking people.
Do you want to move on to some of the stuff we have for the economy? I know we got a good thing that came out started off with.
Oh, I love economics. But the first big story that we have is the GOP has finally released their tax plan. Shelby, have you seen much about the GOP's tax plan?
I haven't gotten to look into it as much as I'd like yet, but
it's very similar to the proposed plan.
It's pretty.
We got most of it.
For the most part, it's similar. I don't think anything was absolutely spot on, except for a few things. But I'm just going to go over a few highlights that I thought were worth mentioning. The bill does cut the current 7 individual tax brackets down to 4, which are 12%, 25%, and 35%, which are a little bit higher than what Trump wanted. But they said that they're also having the 4th one, which is 39.6%, which is actually the current highest bracket amount. They're leaving that in place. Originally, the GOP framework did plan to drop that highest 39.6% rate, but they preserved it in an effort to prevent the tax burden from shifting to lower income taxpayers, which I think is kind of dumb because
they don't pay
taxes.
As we
said, lower income taxpayers, lower income taxpayers, so taxpayers who are lower income, not the ones who don't pay, not the 47%, and so.
Yeah.
I mean, the taxes on the rich are actually going to get raised under this plan. Let's not kid ourselves here. They're calling it the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which
Cut.
The cut act didn't happen. That would have been.
I wish it was.
That's
the
what
cut,
Trump
cut
wanted.
Act. That would have been a lot better. They said the bill will not change 401ks because a lot of people were concerned that this was going to change the way that your 401k retirement savings plans were dealt with in the tax code. It's leaving all that in there. So for people who were worried about that, it's not touching your retirement savings. So if any blue check mark on Twitter starts to say it's taking that away. Just tell them they're an idiot and then move on. But what it also does is it imposes the one-time tax on corporate profits that have been accumulated and held abroad. Now, we've talked about this on the show before about how there's trillions of dollars held by companies overseas and they can't move that money to the United States.
They pay too much tax.
Because they pay too much tax on it. It's not. And that's what Trump ran on was, I'm going to tax it one time, move all that money back to the U.S., one-time tax, that's it.
An exclusive, lower rate.
And that's a 12% tax.
Yeah.
Okay? Corporate tax rate right now is 35%. This plan drops that down to 20%.
Which has always been, in my opinion, the best thing that we could do for the country is lower that corporate tax rate. It's such a small percentage of our overall tax revenue.
Yeah.
This is one of the most effective things you could do. And I mean, that the corporate tax rate, that's just stuff that you're going to be taxing on the consumer again anyways. Like, people don't realize how this stuff works. Like, it's insane. But, sorry to cut you off on this, but us having this new tax holiday and lowering the corporate tax rate, we're going to see potentially $1 trillion come back into the country. That's just sitting there.
At
unused.
least. I mean, they've said possibly trillions.
Trillions.
Plural.
Yeah, that could be invested in, I don't know, new companies, hiring new people, new infrastructure. You could spend it on anything. It's going to be stimulating the economy here as opposed to doing nothing. And because we have one of the highest currently corporate tax rates in the world.
The highest.
The highest. 20% makes us one of the more competitive, markets in the world.
China's is 25.
Yeah. Ireland is 12.5. They have the best one, actually. But, so why wouldn't we do this? For as little as we're giving up with tax revenue. But the thing is, we're so beholden to the leftist mindset on this, we need to fight the corporations, we need to attack them, and somehow it's going to help us. When they're the people that are employing people here, it doesn't make sense.
Right, and but what it also does is something that Republicans had wanted, and I know Trump himself was campaigning on, was it expands the child tax credit from $1,000 to $1,600. Which is actually smaller expansion than what the Senate was pushing for.
Yeah.
But it's still a good expansion. So, I mean, if you have kids, you are taking the child tax credit. You do that. That's one of the things you do when you have kids. So that alone saves families an additional $600 at least per year. Per child.
Think of the productivity that their parents have, that they have this opportunity given to them.
Right. And also, one of the most important things it does is it doubles the standard deduction to $12,000 for individuals, was originally at $6,350, and $12,700 was the original price, now to $24,000 for married couples. So they were cutting a lot of other deductions that people were able to make, and instead saying we're just going to double the standard deduction. For 99% of people out there, that more than makes up for the fact that they're getting rid of some of the deductions. I know they're leaving in mortgage deduction, they're leaving in charitable contributions deduction. I think there was one more that always slips my mind.
Yeah.
But by getting rid of pretty much almost everything else,
We got, correct me if I'm wrong, we went after those state and local tax deductions, didn't we?
Yeah, that is part of. That's why a lot of the blue states are complaining.
They are mad. They're pissed. Now they're going to have to pay their entire tax rate. But I mean, hey, it's better than us, people.
I mean, I say that what that does is it puts an incentive on blue states to lower or eliminate their state income taxes.
You would think.
You would think, but no, they'll probably end up raising it, knowing them.
And then their tax base will just come here like they do anyway.
And I know they said they wanted to get rid of the death tax. I'm definitely down for that. I think we all are. The threshold for the current death tax will double from its current $5.6 million per person to $11.2 million per married couple.
They're doing like a delayed implementation.
It will be ended altogether by 2024.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is kind of a... Whether or not you say delayed implementation or at least it's fizzled out over time, by 2024, death tax is gone.
Yeah. Not as adventurous as it should have been.
I mean, I'd like to just slash it all together, but...
there's no point.
Hey, in this business of politics in Washington, D.C., you got to take what you can get. And so at least it's going to be gone in 7 years. So
it's hard because when you advocate for something, they're going to say, oh, you just want to cut taxes for the rich. And yeah, we are taxing the rich when you do this.
I mean, we've talked about this in the show. Taxes on the rich are actually going to get raised under this program.
Yeah.
Especially since they are keeping in that 39.6 rate for the highest income earners. You get rid of all those extra deductions.
No, the rhetoric that they use on this stuff is 100% lies, but it doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Yeah.
As long as people believe that
they say, the 1%, 2% need to pay their fair share. They're going to end up paying more under this tax program. So if you're a Democrat, understanding that, if you push that narrative, you should be on board with this.
Yeah.
So, but the last important thing that I wanted to cover was we finally know where the brackets are going to break. And this was something I even brought up when we did our midweek episode several months ago about tax reform, was that no one knew where the actual, where did the different brackets end in terms of your income. So we finally have that. For individuals, the 25% rate starts at $45,000. So anything up to $45,000, you're paying, 12%? The 35% rate goes from $45,001 to $200,000. So that covers pretty much the entire middle class there. The 39.6% rate is at $500,000 or more. Now, for married couples filing together, the 25% rate starts at $90,000. The 35% rate goes up to $260,000, and the 39.6 is over $1 million. So, I mean, think about it. If you're a low-income earner who makes let's say you make $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's $40,000 a year. You're paying 12%. If you're an individual,
that's a break for you.
That's not only is it lowered because the old rate went to $10,000 or something was your first 10%, and then it was 12% higher after that. But you're doubling the standard deduction. And most people that don't earn that much money, they're just taking the standard deduction anyways. They're not going to itemize their taxes. I've taken a tax class. I'm an accountant. I know this stuff.
Yeah.
Those people are definitely going to see it lowered, especially the middle class. I mean, the entire priority of this is the middle class. If taxes get raised on the rich, fine. If the taxes get, lowered just a little bit on the poor, fine. The priority for this the entire time was the middle class. And this tax plan is designed to help the middle class more than anybody else. And, I've implemented my own family's earnings on here, and we're going to see about $2,000 of savings ourselves.
Nice.
So, not as much as that average. I think it was 4,000 or 7,000 or whatever they were saying it was.
It's they've been pushing around that number. They've been changing it all the time. I've been seeing a lot of, because initially Trump was saying 4,000.
So I remember the.
But then I saw they got the GOP establishment out there talking about. They're saying 1,800 or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But either way, my family.
It's going to be thousands in the average, anyways.
Yeah, especially for lower income people. If you're a lower income person who has a kid, that $600 by itself. That's in addition to before you even take your standard deduction.
Yeah.
If you understand how these things work. So, for poor people, they should definitely be on board with this program.
And the thing that we always needs to go without, or we always need to mention in regards to this tax plan, is it's backdated to the 1st of January. That's something they've pushed for since the very beginning. So, these tax rates, are going to apply immediately, so people are going to spend accordingly. They're going to be knowing that they're going to have that cut, so they're probably going to spend more in the fourth quarter now, once we get this done.
Yeah, and Trump himself said that he'd like to see this thing passed and signed into law before Christmas. I'm not sure if I made this comment last week on the show.
A great Christmas present.
It would be a great Christmas present to have it signed into law on Christmas itself, or like Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey everyone, here's your tax reform, got it. Have a great Christmas now that you've already bought all your stuff.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think it needs to be signed into law like the first week of December at the latest. Because if people do want to do what you were saying about saying, oh, I'm going to save a lot of money, let me just go out and spend a lot more. That's only going to happen if it happens and there's actually time to buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So otherwise, if that's not the case, I think your Christmas Eve or Christmas Day signing would be fantastic. Because that, like we said, that applies backdated to January 1st of this year. So when you're filing your income taxes in like February of next year, you're seeing a tax cut already.
And when that happens, you're going to see the market explode that
Boom.
day. Because they've it's only been going up because they think this is going to happen. I mean, if it doesn't happen, prepare for the market to drop a good bit. But, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic where it is.
Me too.
We should get this done. I don't think there should be any problems.
I don't think so, especially since we've said that there are a few Democrats that are willing to compromise, they've said, on tax reform. And even,
Joe Manchin's probably voting on this.
Yeah.
Joe Donnelly's probably voting on this.
And even though I think it was, even though Rand Paul voted against the budget, he said he's completely on board for tax reform. And I think even Bob Corker said that his hatred of Trump is not going to get in the way of him voting on tax reform. So already you have, some people who might be questionable votes. I mean, Rand was never a questionable no vote. He was always going to vote for tax reform.
Yeah.
But, you get a couple Democrats on board, you don't got to worry about guys like John McCain or Lindsey Graham cucking out on you. Because you can make that up.
Rand is behind this.
All you need is 50 votes.
Yeah.
Because you get the tiebreaker, Pence is just going to do it. So
we
you don't have
always
to
do that as well.
So, obviously we should. You don't have to worry about getting, how we're going to get to 51. Especially in close stuff like this, get to 50. I mean, I personally think this is probably going to pass about 53, 54. I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to need.
I think we're going to have enough of a buffer zone to where it won't matter. I think. Were you trying to say something, Shelby? Oh, you weren't. Okay. Well, other than that, I think I've talked about as much as I can about the GOP stuff.
We always have so much to say about this tax plan, but it's going to be a good one.
I want our listeners to know stuff.
Yeah.
Because I like our listeners. They're the best listeners. We have the best listeners, believe me.
Me and Bobby were at this party yesterday, and there's people there that listen to Trump Public Radio. It was weird to have people say oh,
people I'd never even met before.
Yeah, people I've never met. It was pretty cool. But yeah, let's touch on the next thing real quick here. So Trump has announced who he's going to replace Janet Yellen with at the Federal Reserve. It's going to be Jerome Powell. He's worked with Janet Yellen the last 5 years. Yellen was actually, since she's up on her term, she was thinking that, maybe she could get it back. Also, I saw Cohn was pushed around a lot.
Gary
I'm glad
Cohn.
Cohn didn't get it. I don't like him very much. But, yeah, I don't really have an opinion so much on Powell. I don't think he's going to deviate much from what Janet Yellen was doing to begin with. He's more open to deregulation in terms of small financial institutions. I don't know. The Federal Reserve isn't great. I mean, they've been okay this year. We had the interest rate increase once so far this year?
I think it's twice.
They wanted to do 3 this year, but they're holding off on that last one because of the hurricanes.
Yeah,
so 2 this year. That's great.
They're probably going to raise it in December.
Oh, okay.
So just be looking out for that. They're probably going to raise it.
I mean, that says the economy is pretty strong. They believe in it if they're willing to do that. I mean, they didn't do that under Barack Obama.
No, we didn't see any.
Yeah.
It kept it
super
virtually
artificial.
zero. The interest rate virtually zero the entire Obama presidency.
Yeah.
But that being said, if you raise it too quickly, too fast, too high, too fast, that can also hurt your economy. So you just got to be very, very careful.
We're in a very strange place where inflation isn't going
We
up.
have low inflation but high GDP growth.
Yeah.
Those normally tend to go hand in hand, but we're not seeing that. So we are in, this is uncharted territory right now. I'm perfectly okay with it. I'm like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. Things are going
It's
great.
good territory, though. I mean, every single week on the economy, we talk about the numbers. We don't try to fluff it up just because we like Trump.
We had numbers this week we were going to cover, but we cut it at the same time.
We took off some good numbers.
It was good, more consumer confidence numbers that we're getting higher.
Also, the housing seller market's looking great. It's at a 30-year high. The average time a house is spending on the market's only 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah, and that's the highest in 30 years. I think
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, but the last thing I did want to say about Mr. Jerome Powell is he is a registered Republican. Now, that don't really mean much because I don't really have faith in quote-unquote Republicans per se. But if he is and Trump picked him, Trump's got to like something about him. And so I doubt he's going to try to crash the economy.
He had good words to say about him. So.
I was going to say, I doubt he's going to do anything that's going to crash Trump's economy. Whereas if you pick someone like Janet Yellen, that's still a possibility of her doing that. That's really all I have to say about Jerome Powell. We'll find out. I mean, she's still going to be in there until February or something like that, or March.
In February.
So it'll be a while before this guy gets in there.
Let's move into the numbers, though, you have on coal this week.
Yes. Trump himself even tweeted about this. U.S. coal production and industry profits jump as Trump vows to end his war on coal, which he's already said. They reported that that the U.S. coal industry has seen a surge in production and profits. The U.S. coal production is up 7.8% since this time last year.
That's a significant number.
However, it's still down 31.5% over the last 10 years. Because there's been such
That's the trajectory we've been on.
Yeah, we've been on a trajectory, but you're starting to see it finally, turn around a little bit. Trump promised to end the war on coal. Hillary Clinton promised
to put you out of business.
I mean, that's part of the reason why. I mean, not that Kentucky and West Virginia are blue states. They're not. They're solid red states. But they went even more solid red. Part of that reason. Part of the reason why Pennsylvania voted for Trump was there's a lot of coal there, too. And so, this is definitely good news for those people. I mean, come 2020, when he's standing in front of a coal mine that used to be closed, it's now open, he's going to be like, hey, look what I did for you. Are you really going to vote against me?
They have new coal mines in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah, they're building new ones. So we just wanted to put this out that, coal industry is on the uptick again.
And Trump's delivering on his promise to the coal industry.
And the last story that we have in economics is the story of more companies moving back to the United States. This is something Trump also said that he was going to do. This is the story of Broadcom Limited, and its president and CEO, Hock E. Tan, announced that the Fortune 100 company is moving their headquarters back to the United States. They had a big old press conference, and the CEO himself even said that, "Thank you, Mr. President. It's truly an honor, a rare honor. Mother would have never imagined that one day her son would be in the Oval Office standing next to the President of the United States. I run Broadcom today, and Broadcom is the product of 3 American legacy items. But in the past, when the conditions in this country made it harder for companies to compete in global markets, the intellectual properties of these companies globalized and moved offshore. Today, we are announcing that we are making America home again." And he then went on to say, "Thank you, Mr. President, or thanks to you, Mr. President, business conditions have improved again in the U.S. Each year, we will invest over $3 billion a year in research and engineering and add another $6 billion in manufacturing, creating high-paying jobs. I look forward to helping to achieve the American dream once again." So this is a company coming back to the United States, specifically crediting Trump and his pro-business policies for the reason why they moved back, promising to invest $3 billion a year into our economy and an additional $6 billion for manufacturing and high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Trump ran on.
And he didn't have to spend any money to do this.
All he had to do was just cut a bunch of regulations.
Yeah.
At a 17-to-1 rate compared to adding new ones. So
really, really good stuff. We're going to see billions of dollars come back in, and this wasn't going to happen if you didn't have Donald Trump as your president. So say thank you for that, I guess.
Especially if you're one of those people who's about to get hired by Broadcom Limited.
Yeah, if you don't know what they do, they manufacture wiring infrastructure and wireless communication and stuff like that. That's what they do.
That's the future of tech.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Wanna move on to some immigration?
Let us move on to immigration. You're right.
Open the door! Immigration!
Lo migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So for immigration, let's start off with some wall stuff. This
I love
week,
the wall.
Yeah, build the wall.
Wall.
So as we know, the prototypes are completed, and they're currently in a 30-day examination period where they're going to test out how good are these prototypes before Donald Trump gets to make his final say on what we want to do to use for the wall. But a lot of the companies are afraid that they're going to be divested from, or their different localities are going to pass ordinance against them. So they sent a collective letter to Sessions this week, asking for help against that happening, because Berkeley, California, Oakland, California, and Richmond, California, along with Tucson, Arizona, have already passed resolutions saying that they're going to stop doing business with firms that get involved with building the wall. And this is along with also other cities planning to do the same thing. So it's not only going to be limited to those cities. I know New York City as well also does this. So there's a lot of fears amongst the companies that are going to be involved with working on the wall that they're going to see a big loss in profits. Hopefully, Sessions can do something about that, because it sets kind of a dangerous precedent to where if the government's working on something controversial, like, people can just attack the companies for doing so.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully there's some work on that soon.
Yeah, and if you're one of the free market types, like, that's definitely the opposite of free market going on there. That's literally government deciding who's allowed to do business and who's not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
hey, as long as we're in control of the government, we might as well make sure that our guys are able to actually do work. So, there you go.
It's crazy. But yeah, it makes me want to go into the next story that we have here, which is also in regards to the wall. And that is, there's some stuff out of Reuters where they're interviewing some Mexican citizens about what they think of the wall prototypes. And they believe that the border wall prototypes humiliate them. So some good stuff. So they got a quote. This is from Paola Gomez, 21. She's a student out in over there in the border. Right, they're building it right.
It's near San Diego, so it's in
near
California.
San Diego. Quote, That's how it looks with things like the wall. They view us as pariahs. The worst thing is it's being built by Latinos themselves. So it's funny, they go straight for, like, the ethnic connection, even though they want to, like, gloss over the national, like, what you're actually a citizen of.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that they kind of
And
shame
they go
them
vote
that way.
and they go straight for the victim card too.
Yeah.
Like, they're viewing us like pariahs.
Yeah, student Paola Gomez, 21, told Reuters, who can hear the noise of the wall's construction from her home, quote, "They need Mexicans and other undocumented people. They save lots of money with us," Manuela Altamirano, 42, told Reuters. Trump constantly does things to humiliate the Mexican people. These walls are like monsters he created, like a border Frankenstein, she continues. So it's just funny that, like, I don't know, it humiliates them that we're even, going to secure our own border. That doesn't really make sense to me, but I don't know. I'm glad it's getting in their head, I guess.
Yeah, me too. And, that one woman, she said, they need Mexicans and other undocumented people. They save lots of money with us. That's a bold-faced lie. We spend over $100 billion a year on illegal immigration to this country. Those people do not save us money. They cost us money. That's why they all need to go back.
I just wonder if they feel the same way about their own wall on their southern border.
Oh, of course they don't. No.
No. But they only see the United States as something that can be exploited by them. They wouldn't hold that standard to themselves to other nations. And they know they can get away with it, too, when they just play, like, they're just going to play the race card on it. They're saying, like, this is just something against Latinos. And they're trying to shame people that are Latino that are working on the wall, like, you're some sort of race traitor for doing so. And it's just like, no, those people are American citizens, and the people coming across the border aren't American citizens. That's all this is. If we didn't have a problem with it, we wouldn't need to build a wall, but we obviously do have a big problem with people coming across.
And, like I said, talking about the victim card there, I'm going to read the very last quote that's in this article.
Yeah.
This is some guy with the last name of Franco, Alex Franco, 22 years old, a Tijuana resident, so not even an American. He says, "This is just going to be a nuisance for all of us who live here," he said, referring to the noise of the heavy machinery on the other side of the border. Well, boo-hoo to you,
And illegal
sir.
immigration isn't a nuisance to us? Like, it's not about you.
Oh no, I can hear those machines are keeping me up at night. Well, maybe if your fellow countrymen were coming in droves and exploiting our country, this wouldn't be a problem. So,
Yeah.
boo-hoo for you, sir, as I said. So,
Yeah. You want to go into the next thing that we have here, though?
of course I do.
So, we got some studies this week. We got a study from Ann E. Casey Foundation. It's in regards to how mass immigration depresses reading and math proficiency in American public schools. For children in the 4th grade living in immigrant families, only 8% scored at or above the proficiency level in reading. In math, the proficiency rate is even worse, with only 5% of 8th graders in immigrant households scoring at or above the proficiency level. Compare these statistics at that of children who are born in the U.S. to non-foreigner families, where 38% of 4th graders score at or above the reading proficiency level, and 34% of 8th graders scored at or above the math proficiency. So there's a huge disparity with how, immigrants do in this country compared to people already here. And just by their mere presence, if you look at it in a statistical sense, they're bringing these scores collectively down.
Yeah.
And, when we have things like No Child Left Behind in this country...
It makes it even worse.
Yeah, because then those teachers are going to be punished for having the lower scores.
And not only that, there's also more statistics in here. I'm sure you wanted to get into them, but I'll just go ahead and read one here.
Yeah.
Only 70% of children in immigrant families live with a parent or guardian who has a high school diploma, while 91% of children in the U.S.-born families live with a householder who has a high school diploma. So significantly lower chance of the parents even of being, at least a high school diploma as well.
Yeah.
So, that begs the question. Why are there so many immigrants in this country that don't have basic educations?
Because we don't have standards.
Exactly. You think that...
This is the thing about immigration, which is just so funny. Like, the United States, we have one of the best pieces of real estate in the world. Mm-hmm. We have one of the best societies you could live in. And we could demand anything we want in exchange for it, and people will meet that. If we say we only want people that have college educations, we will have people apply to come to the United States with college educations. And yet, we're expected to take no standard at all. We're expected to, illegal immigration, when you break it down to it, it's just unknown people in the country for unknown reasons. And that's the standard of which we're supposed to hold to this country, one of the best pieces of real estate, as I said, in the world. When you discriminate with something, you show it has value. If you're not discriminating at all with what you let into this country, yeah, the value is going to drop. That's how property values work generally in the market. If you're just talking about houses, it's the same for the country.
The study also found that 21% of parents who have children in the public school system are illegal immigrants, and 6% of children in the school system are illegal immigrants themselves. 6% of students nationwide are illegal immigrants. Whereas only 48% of immigrant parents with children in the school system are U.S. citizens. So that's not to say that they're illegal, but they're just not citizens.
And you know what happens when you have situations like this? Okay, it's not an even spread. It's going to happen. It's going to affect places along the border more so than elsewhere.
States like Texas, California.
You start having situations where you're flooding these schools with more students, and they can't, afford to even teach them all so much. And it's going to have to go to the taxpayers if you're going to build a new school that wasn't going to be built if there wasn't an influx of illegal aliens.
There's a reason why Texas has one of the highest, high school dropout rates in this country, and a lot of this does have to do with that. It also has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the country. Probably also has a lot to do with that as well.
Not the best.
Yeah, so, And these are problems that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah.
In letting these people come here. You know, we didn't have to let these people in. If past administrations the last several decades would have actually followed immigration law and only letting the good people, instead they're like, no, go ahead and come here. You know, it doesn't matter if you're illegal. Just live in a sanctuary city. So we're not going to deport you. By the way, here's some free housing. By the way, here's free education for your kids. By the way, here's, you know, free healthcare and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're a magnet to come here. It's way better than what they have in their home country. If we're not, like, you know, having our incentives to where, oh, you come here and your children get to go to school for free, they wouldn't bring their kids. So, yeah, it's really frustrating. As someone that's involved in education, like, you could fix the education system if you actually fixed immigration. But you're not supposed to make that connection. And most people in education, you know, are down with what the current situation with immigration is because they're leftists. So.
Yeah. I guess...
I want to go into the refugee stuff we have.
I do.
We got
So,
some really good stuff in regards to
for those
that.
of us who don't like taking in refugees, which is, I assume, probably everybody here,
Yeah.
we have some really good news. And that is that the number of refugees admitted to this country in the first month of fiscal year 2018 was only 1,242. Now, that doesn't sound good, but when you compare that to the first month of fiscal year 2017 under the Obama administration, that is a decline of 87%.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah, real good. And,
Trump's delivering on his immigration stuff in so many ways, but they don't report about this. And the refugee stuff is where we're having a ton of success.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is they said, should refugee admissions continue at the same pace for the remaining 11 months of fiscal year 2018, the total number of refugees admitted for the entire fiscal year would be less than 15,000, which is well below the 45,000 cap for refugees that was set by the Trump administration back in September.
Yeah.
So just because you set a cap doesn't mean that's how many you're going to be bringing in.
Nope.
Saying that's how many at max you're going to bring in. You can theoretically bring in 0. Which that's what John Kelly said. John Kelly was saying
That was
the number,
fun when he
the
said
number
that last
that
week.
we should bring in should be between 0 and 1 refugees per year, which actually brings me to the very next story that I want to get into, and that's Trump is like, no, John Kelly, I'm going to go even better. Instead of bringing in 0 to 1, how about negative 300,000? That's absolutely right. The State Department said that they're going to be taking the 300,000 refugees that are currently here under temporary protection status, which is, I believe, TPS, I believe it's how it's pronounced. The Department of Homeland Security says it has until Monday to announce plans for the 57,000 Hondurans and 2,500 Nicaraguans whose protections are due to expire. So what happened was, back in 1998, Hurricane Mitch hit Central America, and a lot of those people fled to the United States. They got refugee status under temporary protection. Now, as opposed to like regular refugee status means like you can stay here permanently.
Yeah.
Temporary means you've got 20 years, and if we don't renew you, you got to go. Okay, so these are people that a lot of them have been here for 20 years with the understanding, keep in mind, that
This is temporary.
this is temporary, and if you try to make yourself permanent, you were never supposed to be permanent. So there are roughly, I think they said, there's 300,000 people that are currently in that program. However, the ones that are running out, like in 2018, are the, I believe it was the 57,000 Hondurans and the 2,500 Nicaraguans. Those ones there, they're just not going to renew that. So those people, they're going to be gone.
eligible for deportation.
Immediate eligible for deportation once that date hits and they run out. The other 240,000 refugees who have status, a decision will be made on them by January. So if they follow current standards, a lot of them are probably going to be subject to deportation too, because they're probably not going to renew their temporary protected status. So it's, if you deport even 50,000 refugees in a year and you bring in 15,000 refugees in a year, you're having net negative refugee growth in this country, which is perfectly fine for me. That's
compared to what we were supposed to do under Hillary Clinton.
what was it, 250,000 refugees a year, or higher than that?
The numbers on her predictions, if she was president, it would have been something like 1.2 million refugees in her first 4 years.
Yeah, so that's about 400,000.
And you keep in mind, we have to pay for all these people. We have to pay for their housing, their food, and whatever. That's a big chunk of change, and we're not doing that. We're doing the opposite.
Yes.
I'm pretty happy how things have turned out.
Yeah, so that's some good news going around there. They said mostly what they're worried about is the fact that a lot of the people who came here have children that live here now. It's like, well, what are you going to do then? I say send them back anyways. For some of those people, they might get an extension on it. Who knows? But that being said, as it stands right now, that 57,000 plus the 2,500, they're not renewing those people, and they're going to be sent back. So, good news on the refugee point if you're someone like us who doesn't want refugees to be coming into our country.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, that's all we have for immigration.
Shorter than most weeks. It was hard to find stuff, actually, this week.
Yeah.
Let's get into some 2018 election stuff. We got some good stuff on that front. The first thing we wanted to get into, though, was this ad they played out in the Gillespie race.
In Virginia for the governor election. There.
Yeah. So there's a group, Latino Victory Fund? Yeah, Latino Victory Fund. If you haven't seen this ad, it's really good.
You've seen it, right, Shelby?
I have not.
You've not seen this ad? Ooh, you got to go watch it.
You got to look this up.
Trust me.
It's about a minute long. I first saw it when I was driving in the car.
I first saw it on Twitter.
It's not how you should watch these things.
Bad.
But I don't know how you did that.
But so in the ad, there's like these different kids. They're all minorities in the video. They're running. Some are like playing basketball, and those kids that are running, they run up to the kids playing basketball and tell them like, "You need to run too." And out, you see a big, I think it's a black truck.
It's just a big truck.
A big scary truck.
Pickup truck.
It's got a Confederate flag right on the back.
It's got an Ed Gillespie bumper sticker.
Ed Gillespie.
It's got a Gadsden flag on its license plates.
Yeah, and he's chasing them down. And like the ad goes along until like they get to a fence and like the guy's about to ram them, and then they wake up from like a bad dream.
And then the parents are consulting them like, it's okay, it was just a bad dream. But the ad goes on to be like, for many in this country, this isn't just a dream.
Which like, I think the best part about this ad is just like the coincidental nature that this is like it was fear, and then they have the Home Depot guy.
That was the date. This ad was released the day before the Manhattan terrorist attack.
So like, they're so afraid of being run over by Confederate Gillespie supporters, which no one's getting run down by Confederate flag Gillespie supporters. But the Uzbekistani immigrant goes along and gets a much bigger kill rate than the guy would have in the video.
I think instead of trying to say that this ad is bad, here's what we need to do. We need to create our own ads that are attacking Democrats running who want to protect refugees and stuff.
Well, this ad was in response to an ad Gillespie did on how he wants to fight MS-13 in Virginia. So, like, that's why the Latino Victory Fund did that. They felt like they were being targeted because, Gillespie wants to go against MS-13. Well, how dare you deport them?
No, what I'm saying is if there's a person running for office who's, like, really pro, like, refugee status or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What would happen if someone on the right ran an ad with a guy driving a truck that was a Muslim, shouting Allahu Akbar?
Oh man,
driving towards a group of white
that
Christians.
That would go over well, Bobby.
No, but
Christians and Jews.
Yeah, and you would never hear the end of that if someone on our side did that. Instead, they try to sweep this under the rug, and even here, Virginia Democrats are standing by the ad. They're not disavowing it.
Yeah,
and that's what's even worse is that
But it's just like Ed Gillespie is like extremely mainstream Republican. Like he's obviously not who I wanted. I obviously wanted Corey Stewart to win. Like he's not like a radical. He's just a guy running for governor. But they like try to connect him to guys who chase down minorities in pickup trucks. Like it's absurd. Yeah. And like a lot of people, even on the left, were ashamed that they're like even involved with this ad. The ad's been pulled at this point, but you look at polling. So, it's been very close for a while now. I think back in August, the difference in polling Northam Ralph Northam was up over Ed Gillespie like 12 points. Most polls I see have this tied, or Gillespie's up at least like a point or two.
Yeah, I actually in the last week or so, I haven't seen a single new poll out that actually has Northam in the lead. It's either been tied or Gillespie with a 2 to 4 point lead here and there.
And there's no polling numbers in regards to stuff after this ad.
Right.
And generally, the reactions to this ad is like, wow, this is really sick stuff that you're doing. That's got to help them out somehow.
Of
maybe
course.
A point or two. So the election's Tuesday. We're gonna have hopefully some good news report on
next Sunday
Tuesday.
show is gonna be fantastic. Just a bunch of election news.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think this is gonna be the last tip that can actually get us the Virginia governor seat, which Virginia is an important state to take. And think, like, Trump lost Virginia by 5 points, and now, come fall 2017, they might have a Republican governor. That's an interesting shift of things.
And I think, one of the things you do have to keep in mind, and, this might go counter to some of the stuff that I would normally say in the show, is there have actually been a lot of studies that have been done about governor races in, like, midterm years and stuff like that, and how that fares for, like, the next president that gets elected. For the most part, there's actually no correlation there. Like, there is a correlation, a positive correlation, if you look at, like, red on one side, blue on the other, and, like, margin of victory.
Yeah.
A Ed Gillespie win does not actually mean that we would win the state in 2018.
I don't think we're winning the state in 2020.
We're not going to... I've said this before in the show. I always had Hillary winning Virginia, especially after she picked Tim Kaine to be her VP, to run against her. But even then, like, with the expansion of D.C. into, like, Maryland and Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, which is becoming, like, extremely liberal.
Yeah.
There's no way that we're going to ever win Virginia ever again. So I don't even count that as a swing state personally. I just count that as a blue state. So, yeah, I want Ed Gillespie to win here. I think he stands a pretty good shot of winning. But even if he does win, I still consider that a blue state.
There's an interesting thing that actually happened in regards to this race that I didn't even write down, but I did read about.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph Northam is actually now vowed, he's the Democrat.
Yeah.
He said that he would sign legislation against allowing sanctuary cities in Virginia. Now, they don't have any to begin with. But he went out here and said that, probably in the hopes of, like, getting some swing votes, but all he's really doing is pissing off his base. He's been getting attacked a ton. So he's been running a really shitty campaign the last couple of weeks, and we've been highlighting this, and he didn't plan for this ad to get, aired.
Yeah, because this was a super PAC ad. This had nothing to do with them.
But, I don't know. It might hurt him in the end.
And frankly,
we'll see next week.
I hope it does.
Let's move on to the next thing we have, though.
Yeah, so the next thing we have is down in Alabama, the special election that they have going there. In the final week before that, because, their special election is also happening here, we got Roy Moore versus, what's the Democrat's name?
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, that's absolutely right. So... You remember, I think this was either last week or the week before, Fox News put out that...
It was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Fox News put out that laughably absurd poll that showed them tied. Showed a Democrat and a Republican tied
in
for a Senate race in Alabama. And just like the internals of the poll, like extremely oversampled Democrats. Well, there's finally a new poll out that's actually, good. This is a political poll that was done. It's got Roy Moore up by 17 points.
Yeah.
Which that's about in line with what I expect him to win by. Anywhere between about, at least 13 is what I'm saying is the minimum it's going to be is 13-point victory. Definitely not with that stupid Fox News poll that they put out there. But what's interesting is some of the internals of this poll that said 49% of those polled definitely will be voting for Roy Moore.
49.
That's not even I'm probably going to vote. Definitely, for sure, Roy Moore is my guy. I'm voting for him. 49%.
He got every Luther Strange primary voter.
Yeah. And they said that the data is actually showing that Moore has united the Republican Party following the primary compared to what a lot of people were like, no, this is going to just split the people. No.
Yeah, they're like complaining it's so divisive. No, we're trying to primary Republicans right now.
No, the Republicans are like, I'm going to get behind my guy, whoever that is, and that's the exact narrative we've been pushing on the show for the last
which is why it's important to shit on polls like that Fox poll that came out 2 weeks ago. Okay, what the media's trying to do is gaslighting you into thinking, if you're going to primary establishment Republicans for these new guys you want, you're going to lose your midterm election. That's not the case. That's not happening.
No, in fact, the exact opposite's happening. The people
He's
who are on
uniting
Bannon's
people
side,
behind him.
the people who are on the Bannon side, the Trump side, against the GOP establishment, not only are they going to upset the incumbent Republicans, they're going to win in 2018. And I know we've talked about this a million times in the show already, especially when you bring up the left. You know, we've talked about this last week on the show, how the Democrats, they're, you know, not advocating the middle. What's the word that you like to use? They're
abdicating the
abdicating, right. They're abdicating the middle.
By them pushing more left, they abdicate the middle to the right.
Right, because, you know, regular people who are in, like, kind of centrist in politics who might lean left, if the left just goes completely progressive left over there and the right seems more moderate to them, and be like, yeah, of course I'm going to vote for this person.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this for a long time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, of course. No, that's why we want you.
But, I mean, the farther left that the left goes, the farther, like, anything that is left of center gets pushed to center.
Right.
The center gets pushed to right, and your right gets pushed to the far right. Anything that's slightly right of left is considered radical, as you were talking about earlier when you're saying that guy's not radical. Well, he probably is in their eyes because...
Well, I mean, that's what I described last week on the show. You know, for the left, they see it as the fishhook theory. You know about the fishhook theory? Where, you know, you've got a circle that says far left, and a line extends out to the right of it, and it starts to curve up,
yeah,
and then it comes into a curve and points in itself. The ending point where it points right there is far right. Directly under that, on the original line, is centrist. So to the far left, they see the far right and centrist as the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, no, but I was just going to bring up, you know, we've talked about this in the show a lot. There are over 200 Democrats running in Democrat primaries in 2018. The most they've ever had before was like 60.
It's like 65.
It's like 65. So not only is the Democrat Party broke and in debt and having no money coming in,
they're going to push each other left.
They have to fight each other. Because you know there are going to be a lot of progressive leftists who are going to try to campaign against establishment Democrats.
Which it's like a legitimate thing, like, to, you know, go against that. But, like, how are you going to turn that narrative into, like, oh, centrist, vote for me?
And that's exactly, and that's what I'm saying, is especially in close districts and close races, if somehow an establishment Democrat gets beat out by a progressive leftist, the Republican is going to win that. Because regular swing people are not going to vote for a super far left progressive.
And this is the other thing that happens when they go farthest left, is that they start eating their own.
Right.
And that's also good for us, because when they start eating their own, in the same time, they're pushing people to our side.
Because, like, I remember, I believe it was like a month ago back, I had a story that I was talking about some, like, DNC operatives were talking, they had internal polling and seeing how different policies were, like, not flying and whatnot. So things like free college actually polls extremely bad, because free just sounds like, you know, there's no such thing as free. It just seems like sky in the pipe dreams. But, like, to win a Democrat primary, you're only appealing to your base. But their base is so isolated away from the rest of America at this point. I mean, last week we were talking about the Pew Research polling on how polarized the country's become. Over the course of just, like, the last 20 years, it's insane. And you can feel this in the air. But just, they don't have enough people to win any of these things.
Which is really funny, considering that Democrats do, like, outnumber Republicans in this country.
Yeah, they do.
It's where independents get involved, and we're winning the independents right now.
And it's also
the Democrats
where
are losing the independents.
It's also where, though, the Democrats are. There are a lot of Democrats in the country, but they're only in their own states. They stick to their own big cities. They don't bleed out into the rest of the country. You know, that's why, even though, like, historically, when someone's elected president, the midterm after them, their party loses 24 House seats.
Yeah.
I believe the magic number is 24 this time around. If we lose 24, we lose the House majority. But if you take every single, district that Clinton won, and also that was within 5 points of the margin of error for Trump winning, if you give every single one of those House districts the Democrats come the midterms, they still don't have the majority.
Right.
And that's not going to happen with how things are going.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying on the show, I predict the Republicans will probably lose maybe 6 or 7 at most in the House. And we're going to gain about 3 or 4 Senate seats here.
Yeah,
So,
we're going to gain a lot of Senate seats.
Yeah,
That's the
I
fun
do.
part.
I do think we are going to lose, or have a net loss, I should say, in the House of Representatives, about 6 or 7.
I think
the
it'll be more than
24
that. I
hours.
think it'll be more than that. I mean, as someone that's worked on our databases a lot for it, yeah, there are races we're going to lose.
Yeah,
But,
for sure. I know there's races we're going to lose.
Yeah. And if I really went into depth and actually counted out which ones I think are going which way, maybe I'll know an exact number. But yeah, I don't think we're losing the House at this point.
No,
Even though they have been productive. If they do this tax stuff, it's going to be enough for most people.
That's absolutely for sure. And I think there's one last thing that you wanted to cover in terms of 2018 election stuff.
Yeah, we got some interesting polling numbers.
And interesting polling numbers, I should say.
We got a number of different interesting polling numbers. I can't figure out where these numbers came from. We used to have... Oh, yeah, this is from an NBC Wall Street Journal poll. And the funny thing from this poll, which was initially what you wanted to talk about, is John McCain actually has better favorabilities amongst Democrats than Republicans.
Right.
So amongst Democrats, 43% have a positive view of him, and only 28% have a negative view of him. So, that's 15 points more positive than negative. You compare John McCain for Republicans, 33% have a positive view of him, and 45% have a negative view of him. So that's -9. He might as well just go join them.
He is them.
Yeah, he really
He should
is.
just do. He should
He's
just
a rhino.
just take off the R, go get the D, and
Yeah.
you'll be cheered for that.
I mean, there's only one thing that I ever cheer about when it comes to John McCain, and that's his tumor.
Yeah.
But
Primary him.
I'm
Tumor.
voting for his tumor in the primary.
Well, he doesn't have a primary actually until 2020.
I know.
So he's probably
if he's
gonna
still
die
around,
before
which he
then,
won't be. He'll be dead in
sadly.
like 2 years.
But there's also some other interesting things. Donald Trump has 78% approval amongst Republicans, as opposed to negatives of only 13%. The Republican Party as a whole amongst Republicans only has 61 to 16. So Donald Trump's more popular and more, people have more positive viewing of him than the Republican Party. as a
And
whole.
that's interesting how, only 61% of positive view of the Republican Party, I keep using the poll number that I like to use in the show.
Those are still good numbers for them.
59% of Trump voters see themselves as... 59% of people who voted for Trump see themselves as a Trump supporter first and a member of the Republican Party second.
Which, that's how I view myself.
And we keep using, every time we bring up, Bannon going to war against the GOP establishment, and how we're seeing that the
Most
Bannon
people
people,
support
the
that.
establishment candidates are losing. Most people support this. This number goes right along with that. 78% of Republicans approve of Trump. Only 61% have a positive view of the Republican Party. I mean, I'd say I've kind of come around here in the last couple of months. I'd say I do have a positive view of the Republican Party, but even for me, I'm borderline. I'm do I have a positive, or am I just kind of neutral? Because there's plenty of stuff about it that I hate.
Yeah.
But even then, I think if you did that exact same poll, but instead of have just positive, negative, or neutral, had it a 5-point scale, you'd probably have a really lot more accurate,
So-
10-point scale even.
Here are some really two good numbers that have come out of this poll. I just noticed I was looking back at it.
All right.
So, amongst Democrats, their positive to negative percentages towards their own party, the Democratic Party, 32% have a positive view, 42% have a negative view. So they have net negative views on their own party, as opposed to, that's minus 10 points
Right.
percentage. As the Republicans, they had plus 45. Donald Trump, amongst Democrats, has a more positive view than the Democrats. He has 36 to 54. So overall, he has more negative points, but he has more people that are willing to say they have a positive view of him than the DNC.
That's amazing. And that kind of comes around to a lot of the stuff that I've just been thinking about and kind of said along the show, that, the people who are the most vocally anti-Trump are all the same people, that they're just a very, very vocal minority of people who, I don't want to just,
A third of Democrats have a positive view of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and so, if you apply this number here, if you have 78% of Republican approval, plus 33% of Democrat approval, plus probably around
50 to 60 for
60%
independents.
for independents, there's no way that his approval rating is in the high 30s to low 40s.
Yeah.
It's going to be about 45 to 48% of all Americans.
Which is why we don't really talk about approval ratings on this show.
We've covered maybe
the internals on them are always so bad.
And, that's why I always tell, if you're listening to this podcast, anytime you see any poll, look at the party breakdown, Democrat, Republican, Independent. Look at that. Even for state polls, look at the state party breakdowns. And if those things are off, I'd say this a lot of times. Back in the election, there's an ABC poll that came out about a month before the election, had Hillary beating Trump by 12 points. The internals of that was oversampled Democrats by almost 20. Okay? Mm-hmm. This country at most is like a D+2, maybe D+3. So there's 3% more.
And slowly moving towards R.
Yeah. Like there was, back in March, I think, not Reuters, or it was either Gallup or, one of those things, had the party breakdown like that they do every month. They do a release of party breakdown. They had it tied. So it's been fluctuating between about D+1 to D+2 to tie since Trump has become president. So if any poll is, I'd say even any higher than D+4, because there's going to be margin of error. Any higher than D+4, just disregard it. What I suggest people do is look at the internal samples of themselves. So, okay, they oversampled Democrats, but look at the stuff of the Democrats alone that's done. What's the approval among them? Because they always release that. They always release that.
Yeah.
Use that exact same methodology, redo the sampling size, apply that same statistics, then you'll get a more accurate sample of what things actually are looking at right now. You do that, you start to realize that those 38% approval ratings are 43. That those 43% approval ratings are 45. So
the dude's not doing nearly as bad as they want to make him out to be on the TV. I acknowledge he's a very unpopular guy. I still like him, and I don't think he has 50%, but it is not 38%.
And you know what I've been saying? We've been saying over and over and over in the show. If you look at polls done of Trump's individual policies, they're getting 65, 75% approval.
His hand in the economy is 65 right now. Something like 70% support his immigration.
It's like the thing about when you're talking about the RAISE Act. They did polling on almost every single individual aspect of the RAISE Act. The lowest thing that was polled was 60% approval among all Americans. The moment they said this is the RAISE Act that Trump wants to support, it dropped down to less than 50.
Yeah.
People love Trump's policies, but they don't like him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what these things really, really come down to. I mean, we've talked about, there's that video that was released last week of the guy who was going to college campus talking about Trump's tax thing, said this is Bernie's platform. They love the individual aspects, but once they're like, oh, that's Trump's plan. Ooh, I don't like Trump's tax plan.
It's going to help the rich.
Yeah,
can't do
exactly.
that.
So, I don't care at all if Trump has a 12% approval rating in a poll. If his approval rating amongst his policies is anywhere above 50%, re-election's in the bag. And I mean, re-election's already in the bag.
It's looking very good.
Yeah. I'd give it at least a 90% chance he gets re-elected. That's higher than I gave him to even win. And I knew he was going to win.
I mean, who are they going to run against him?
I don't know. But anyways, that's really all I have to say about polling, per se. I've learned a lot about polling since the election.
Yeah.
So.
Want to move into just the bottom of the stack? It correlates to just what we were talking about. Well, actually, sadly, Shelby can't be here the whole time. It is actually time for her to go. Well, anytime you want to come back on, we're open to having you on. Hope it was fun the time that you could have been on.
I would love to be back when I'm less tired and I can contribute more, but hopefully you don't mind having me back sometime.
Oh, no, we'd love to have you back on anytime.
Talk to me about conspiracy theories or anything like that. I'm all over it.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, but with that said, let's head into the bottom of the stack. Other news we got for the news this week. It also connects to what we were just talking about, actually, and that is Donna Brazile's bombshell. She admitted how the DNC rigged the primaries for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I mean, she literally is admitting how this happened. So this pretty much, she's writing this in her book, and what she came across was that there was revelations that she found out about it and how the Democrat Party actually rigged the book. So you first have to look at the fact that Obama left the Democrat Party $24 million in debt, which included $15 million in bank debt and more than $8 million owed to vendors after his 2012 campaign. They'd been slowly paying that off, but they were in a lot of debt. Whereas Hillary Clinton, with the Clinton Foundation, had a lot of money. So what was happening was she was taking her campaign, which is Hillary for America, and the Hillary Victory Fund, which is its joint fundraising vehicle within the DNC, they had taken care of 80% of the remaining debt in 2016 and placed the party on allowance. Now, what ended up happening was the DNC needed a $2 million loan, which the campaign had arranged. Okay, so the campaign was already paying for the DNC already.
Yeah.
Now, what ended up happening was what people would do is, in order to pay back that money, the Clinton campaign was essentially, using the DNC as a way to, like, funnel their money. Okay? So under FEC law, an individual can contribute a maximum of $2,700 directly to a presidential campaign, which is, twice that if you're a married couple. Each person can go like $5,400 total. Individuals could then, if they had already maxed out giving money to the campaign, to her campaign, they could write an additional check for $353,400 to the Hillary Victory Fund, which represented $10,000 to each of the 32 states parties where the Victory Fund agreement was there. The money would have to be first deposited to the states, then transferred to the DNC shortly after. Money that was in battleground states usually stayed in that state, but all the other states funneled that money directly back to the DNC through their headquarters, to the Hillary Clinton campaign headquarters in Brooklyn. They said that that was the deal that Robbie Mook struck with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It was to sustain the DNC. They sent the party nearly $20 million from September until the convention in order to prepare for the election. And when she asked, that is when Donna Brazile asked about the burn rate, she asked, how much money do we need every month in order to fund the party? The burn rate was $3.5 million to $4 million a month. So that means that every single month, the DNC was giving $3.5 to $4 million in fundraising money to the Clinton campaign in order to pay back the loans that they had already given. That pretty much gave the Clinton campaign full control over whatever the DNC was doing at that time.
Yeah. And I actually have another piece here. On Friday, there was a memo released by NBC. They got this out. And it's a memo that shows how Clinton was able to control the DNC through arrangements that they made. So the memo of understanding between the two, the DNC and Hillary for America, shows how they agreed a $1.2 million payment each month from Hillary for America to the DNC in exchange for influence over the financial, strategic, and operational use of those funds. The DNC also hired a communications director from one of two candidates previously identified as acceptable by Hillary for America. There's some other things in how, she was able to use her influence because she was paying into them, but it's just plain for you right there. They're the ones that are fundraising the entire DNC's existence. They're allowed to choose whoever they want to be in positions of power. They have to run things by the Hillary for America campaign before they can even do anything.
Yeah, so obviously she was always going to be the nominee. Anybody else wouldn't stand a chance. They would make sure that that other person doesn't stand a chance. So yeah, and if you talk about those shady things that happened in the DNC to try to rig the primaries against Bernie, that stuff did happen. And it was on purpose too. So if you're out there a Bernie Sanders supporter, you knew this was happening. Trump knew this was happening. Everyone knew that the DNC was rigging it for Hillary. But the problem is the people in the DNC who are in charge of stuff were the people that Hillary put there in order to cover for her. So, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff going on here. Now, not all of that stuff is illegal. It's just extremely unethical, even in the game of politics.
Yeah. I mean, they market these primary elections as, fair elections.
Or anything but.
But that's false advertising. And people are giving their money to Bernie Sanders thinking that it was going to be a fair fight.
I mean,
it wasn't. That money was turned over to the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Well, the people that gave those $27 donations directly to Bernie, that money went directly to Bernie. But if they give any money to the DNC, thinking, oh, this will be to help my local candidates or to help, Bernie or whoever, that money just went straight back to Hillary's pocket in order to be paid back.
It could have.
But, if you didn't donate your money directly to Bernie or to another candidate, it went to the DNC. If you just gave like a pocket donation to the Democrat Party, none of that money went to help Bernie or any other Democrat candidates at that point.
Yeah. So, the DNC, things are looking bad. You're in a bad situation. You got a lot of corruption. You somehow have to fix this whole Clinton problem. Not looking good.
Not going to go well for those people, I'll tell you that.
They're really setting us up for a good midterm with how they run things there. Let's go into the next thing that we have here, though, and that is some information on millennials and their preferences for socialism and communism. This polling was from... Where was this polling from?
This was a latest survey from the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which is a DC-based nonprofit.
Yeah. So, they have some numbers on how, millennials like communism and socialism to what degree. Half of all millennials would rather live in a socialist or communist country rather than a capitalist country. Very, very staggering.
Yeah, that's really, really bad. What's even worse is 22% of them have a favorable view of Karl Marx, and a surprising number see Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-un as heroes. In fact, 13% of millennials view Kim Jong-un as a hero to either their country or the world, and the number for Joseph Stalin is also 13%. The number for Vladimir Lenin, 17%. The number for Karl Marx, 18%.
Che Guevara, 26%.
Interesting, though, Ronald Reagan scores the highest, though, at 60%. Right under him, Bernie Sanders at 40%. Donald Trump, in case you're wondering, scores at 31%, which is even lower than George W. Bush, who got 39%. So these numbers are kind of all over the place, but it's still really, really bad. But, there's one more thing that I wanted to say with this, and that's how they were saying that other findings include the belief held by 53% of millennials that Americans' economic system works against them, which is the same percentage in the prior study. Meanwhile, 66% of Gen Z, who are ages 16 to 20, say the system is actually working for them.
So they believe the exact opposite of our generation. And
we've talked about
politically,
how
they are the opposite of us. We are a lot more left-wing than them, and they're a lot more right-wing than us.
Yeah. And they said when it comes to the wealth divide, Americans seem to be on the same page, with 80% saying it's a serious issue, up from 78% a year ago. So, margin of error, that's pretty much in the same spot. They also mostly agree, 68%, that the highest earners don't pay their fair share in taxes. So we got to work on 68% of people. That's what we got to
work on a lot of people. I mean, half of them prefer socialism and communism to capitalism. And... they strawman capitalism so hard, but all capitalism is just like allowing people to purchase things and exchange those, for money.
Yeah.
Property rights. They'd rather get rid of that stuff. A
lot of them don't believe in property rights. That's the thing.
No, they don't.
But we could go on all day talking about, how much we hate communism and socialism. So, we should just move on to the next story.
Let's move on to the next one. The next one is a fun one that also kind of plays into what we were just talking about. So, on the show, we've gone over studies that show how people with, lower testosterone prefer socialism. We got some results from individuals themselves that are very socialistic leaning. And that is the crew at BuzzFeed. Did a little testing of their testosterone levels. You want to give us the results, Bobby?
I will give you the results, but first I'm going to give you the average levels for where they should be. So these are all guys who are in the 25 to 34-year-old category, okay? The testosterone level on average for someone in that age range should be about 617, okay? And however they do that measurement, that's how it comes out.
If you have below 270, you're considered, low testosterone. Mm-hmm. You have dangerous amounts low testosterone.
The highest score of any of those four BuzzFeed guys they scored was 363. And you said 270 is where it's like dangerously low levels?
It's the try guys. If you have ever watched any BuzzFeed stuff. Have you ever watched any BuzzFeed stuff, Bobby?
I never watch anything from BuzzFeed.
I have seen some videos of these guys have been in before. They're doing some things in the science of attractability. That's why they did this.
I see. But you said 270 was the cutoff for like dangerously low levels of testosterone?
Yeah. Below 270 is not good.
3 of the 4 guys scored below 270. You had Eugene, who was the guy who had 363. Keith scored 259. Zach scored 252. And Ned scored 212. I mean, just looking at these guys' pictures, I can tell you they have low testosterone. They all have that same look to them, don't they?
Yeah, the guy who scored the best for testosterone, Eugene, is actually the Asian guy.
Ah.
The other 3 guys, the white guys, those are the dangerous levels of low T, which is kind of funny because on average, Asians have lower testosterone rates than whites.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting when you look at that. But, you know...
I mean, they still all of them are well below the average of American testosterone.
Oh, yeah, well below. If the average is 617, I mean, yeah, Eugene's at 363, you could almost double it, and, you know, then that would be at, what, about 720? So, you know, you could raise his by about 66%. So he's like 66% under the average. Significantly under the average. All 4 of those guys.
Yeah.
I'd like to get ours checked just to see where it is. I assume it's probably at or above average, you know.
I haven't been working out consistently lately, so mine wouldn't be particularly high.
I mean, there's always a standard deviation to the average, too.
Yeah.
So probably, I'd say if you're within about 100 points of the average, you're probably good.
Yeah.
You know, we like to, you know, use like bell curve models and stuff like that. So, yeah, not good for those guys. But, you know, that kind of brings up the whole point that we've been talking about, how, like, you know, people with lower testosterone levels tend to prefer like socialism, communism, and
because they're not personally strong themselves, so they want the government to fight on their behalf. Or,
yeah, and
you know,
can
provide for them.
And you look at like any, like, you know, I hate to talk about the Bernie Bros, but so many of those guys are just like the weakest guys you ever see.
Yeah, low T.
Yeah, super low T. So I don't know. That's all I have to say. Can we move on to the next story?
Let's move on to the next thing. So this is a thing that happened yesterday.
Yesterday morning.
Yes.
I'm sorry, yesterday afternoon.
Yesterday afternoon.
Actually, I'll go ahead and cover this story. No,
yeah,
it's
you
your
can.
name. So, Senator Rand Paul was assaulted at his Kentucky home. He was assaulted by a guy by the name of Reen Albert Boucher, 59. He was arrested and charged with 1 count of assault in the 4th degree. Rand Paul suffered minor injuries in the attack, the details of which are unknown. They said he had a couple of minor cuts and bruises along his face, so he probably got punched. But the Kentucky State Board of Election voting records lists Boucher, or Boucher, however you pronounce it, as a registered Democrat. And apparently they said that the guy lived just down the street of Rand, so he probably knew him.
Yeah.
And they'd said something along the lines of, like, they didn't really like each other. And one report I heard, Rand was just like outside in his yard. So the guy was probably walking down the street, got pissed off, walked up and punched him. And, you know, I think the story that's directly after this one is why we're going to continue talking about this one, but let's get into that one.
So the next thing that we want to talk about is there's some polls out of Cato that came out this week. The Cato Institute is like a libertarian institute, and they did some polling on, you know, part of their free speech and tolerance survey, and the numbers that came out of it were pretty staggering. 58% of people say they have political views they're afraid to share. Now, if we live in a country where Republican senators are just getting punched out in their front yard, yeah, I imagine there's a lot of people that are just holding their mouth on things they believe in because they're afraid of physical violence. It's the reality that we live in now. They also got some other things in here. We can show the breakdown. It's not actually even in how people say that they fear, you know, talking their political beliefs.
You referring to this party breakdown here?
Yeah. So amongst Democrats, only 53% fear, you know, speaking their political beliefs. So still the majority, but slim on that. Independents fear speaking their mind on their political views, 58%, so that's in line with the average. But Republicans, they fear speaking their political views to the degree of 73%. So, yeah, it's people on the right that are afraid to speak up about things and speak their mind. They also have some things. 71% of Americans say political correctness has silenced discussion in society that we need to have. So,
40% say the government should prevent hate speech. So whatever that actually means there.
yeah, it has some other numbers, but the numbers on people afraid to share their political views and political correctness has silenced discussion in this country. Those are the two that I think are most important to talk about. And the situation in regards to these things in the country have gotten really bad. I've never been someone that's been afraid to speak out my beliefs on these things. So
I have
can't
a
really
few times,
relate,
but I've gotten better over recent months about it.
Yeah,
But I would still say, for the most part,
but the average person isn't a podcast host either.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
thing.
especially for someone who believes that stuff. And
not everyone is as well explained as us in how they view these things. I mean, every single week we go out of our way and we're describing why we believe in these things.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, they're not that invested in politics. They just know that they're a conservative.
They know their beliefs, but some people aren't good at being able to explain what they believe, even though they do believe it and they have legitimate reasons to believe it.
Yeah.
I used to be that way a lot. So people would try to stump me by having me to explain myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that anymore because I've gotten better at it, but I can understand where a lot of these people are coming from too.
So, yeah, not the best stuff with that, but that's where we are in the world. Are there any other numbers from there you want to bring up?
There's a few things. In terms of when they're talking about what is hate speech and stuff, 59% of liberals say it's hate speech to say that transgender people have a mental disorder. Only 17% of conservatives agree. I mean, they do. It's called, gender dystophia. So there you go. 39% of conservatives believe it's hate speech to say that the police are racist. Only 17% of liberals agree.
Gender dysphoria.
Is that what I said?
You said dystopia.
Oh, that too. 80% of liberals say it's hateful or offensive to say illegal immigrants should be deported. Well, guess what? They have to go back. There you go. I just committed hate speech to 4 out of 5 liberals out there. 87% of liberals say it's hateful or offensive to say women shouldn't fight in military combat roles. 90% of liberals say it's hateful or offensive to say that homosexuality is a sin. And there's also some numbers that don't have to do with hate speech that I think is worth mentioning here. They said 51% of Democrats support a law that requires Americans to use transgender people's preferred gender pronouns.
Like they have in California.
Yeah, so if you don't use their preferred pronoun, you're going to jail, dude. 51% of Democrats believe that. 65% of Republicans say the NFL players should be fired if they refuse to stand for the anthem. 58% of Democrats say employers should punish employees for offensive Facebook posts. 47% of Republicans favor bans on building new mosques. Okay, so, there's some good numbers in there. But yeah, overall, honestly, none of these numbers are really surprising to me at all. Just from what we experience in our everyday lives in terms of dealing with the left and even dealing with the right, none of these numbers are shocking at all to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, they're not great numbers, but it's how things are. Want to move on though.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Let's move on to some Vegas stuff.
So the first thing we have is, you remember that Vegas security guard who apparently got shot, but then went missing, and then he came back and he appeared on the Ellen show. That guy, Jesus Campos is his name. Well, he's now receiving a subpoena to come testify on the timeline of the events and other circumstances surrounding the attack. So he's been given the subpoena by an attorney for Rachel Shepard, a 26-year-old from California, who was shot 3 times in the attack. So this is a person who was shot, who's suing, and he's being called to testify. So maybe we'll finally figure out what this guy's story actually is, because even
he's
this
been weird.
guy, he's being weird. Why did he disappear? why'd he go on the Ellen show?
You don't really say much on there.
Yeah, and, this guy is just, why is his name not on the registry of security guards in the state of Nevada? It's really, really interesting. So maybe we'll actually get some information regarding that. I don't know. Again, we don't know anything from this thing. It's been a month. It's been over a month now. But the other story that we have regarding the Vegas shooting is apparently one of the police officers fired his weapon inside the shooter's suite. Now, this is contrary to earlier reports when he said that he didn't fire his weapon. Now he's saying that he actually did. They said that the gun went off after the officers had made entry to the room, but the rounds were not fired in the room where Paddock was found dead. It was found in the connecting room there. And he was already dead at this time. Okay? Yeah. So why is this guy's gun discharging? Police officers' guns don't just go off by themselves. They have to have been pulled their trigger. Yeah. Which means this guy was walking around, after they already knew that Stephen Paddock was dead. Somehow this guy's gun goes off.
That's another weird thing.
Again, it's another weird thing. I mean, I can understand if, when they busted into the room, he got a little trigger happy and thought he saw something.
Yeah.
But this was completely different. This was after they were already into the room searching it.
There's just so many different weird things that we have, little details have come out about the Vegas stuff, and we just don't know anything that happened. Why did this happen? Don't know. It's really strange.
Nope. So, yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to move on to the next story here. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the NFL when we were reading that data. So Papa John's has decided to pull all of their NFL-associated ads citing negative consumer sentiment. They pretty much blamed it on the fact that because of the fact that the NFL ratings are so far down, and they're down a lot, that the financial, I guess I should say, the financial cost to payoff of putting ads on NFL games isn't enough for them anymore.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And there's so much backlash against the NFL that it's starting to hurt their sales of pizzas. Now, if you think about it, there's a reason why they put that on NFL games. You want you to buy a pizza when you're watching the game, or buy a pizza later. Okay, if people aren't watching the games, they're not going to order a pizza before the game starts in order to eat it during the game.
Yeah.
So that's, someone who's already turned off the NFL in a boycott is hurting their sales, whereas they normally might buy a pizza or two every single season for the games. So I can understand where they're coming from, but they've become the first major company to pull their support from the NFL.
And they do a lot of ads with the NFL. The Peyton Manning ads come to mind.
Oh yeah, it's like every third or fourth ad you see a Papa John's one.
Yeah.
So
you won't be seeing those on Sunday anymore.
But that being said, I like Papa John's myself.
I do too.
So maybe we should do that this week. I don't know.
But
the last story that we want to get into, my blood boils when I heard about the story. So Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, the traitor who deserted his post and got 6 guys killed looking for him, was dishonorably discharged from the Army, but he will receive no jail time.
No jail time.
No jail time for fleeing his post in 2009. And then was captured by the Taliban, head there. And then Obama trades like 3 or 4 Gitmo guys for this guy's release. This is after 6 or so of our guys were killed looking for him.
Yeah.
Okay? This guy was a traitor, is what he was. And he deserves to hang. And I literally mean that. He deserves to hang.
Yeah, he should be executed for what he did.
The U.S. has stopped executing people that are traitors or who desert. We need to bring that back.
He's
Open
a traitor
execution.
to the nation.
Yeah. And what's even worse is the fact that he was being tried in court there. It was in the military court where he was being tried. That after this was at Fort Bragg, by the way, North Carolina. So what pisses me off the most is that the guy who was overseeing the case, I want to see if I can figure out where his name was here. I can't find it, unfortunately. I believe it was whoever was the colonel that was overseeing that case, was saying that because of the fact that during the campaign, Trump was tweeting about Bo Bergdahl, that that should play into his decision, and that, Trump said bad things about Bo Bergdahl, therefore Bo Bergdahl shouldn't receive any more prison time.
Jesus Christ.
This guy deserves to spend the rest of his life in Leavenworth prison.
If anything.
But because Trump said some mean things about him, we should let him go. Okay? The guy who made that decision is in the Army. Okay? Or is in the military, one of the branch. I assume it's the Army since it's Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
And this was after Bergdahl pleaded guilty. This was after he pleaded guilty. So, here's my standpoint. That judge, I believe, fits under the description of bringing disgrace to the uniform and to the Army. Okay?
Yeah.
He needs an officer. When you're an officer, especially when you're an officer, I mean, even when you're enlisted, if you have conduct that brings dishonor and disgrace to the military or to the uniform, you can have your commission revoked. And I think Trump should do that. Like, I think he should use all the power that he has as commander-in-chief to specifically choose that one, I believe it was that colonel who did that, and say, you're out of this army, or you're being demoted down to a previous rank, whatever your previous permanent rank was. Or, you're going to be reduced down to private, and you're going to have to still serve the rest of your time. That's what I believe should happen, because what that soldier did, whoever made that decision, is a complete disgrace to the Army, to the United States of America. And he let politics get in the way of conducting the mission. And Bo Bergdahl deserves a new sentence. I don't care what the Constitution says about being tried again. He deserves to have a second sentence, and he just deserves to be thrown in prison for the rest of his life, or executed, or both.
Yeah.
And I want to be present when that happens. Because that guy fucking pisses me off.
It's crazy. I mean, no repercussions for being a traitor to the nation.
6 guys died trying to find him.
Yeah, people are dead because of this guy's
There's one
actions.
guy who's living the rest of his life in a wheelchair, and he can't move. Okay,
Yeah.
He's essentially he's not totally brain dead, but he's almost brain dead because of the injuries that he received trying to save this guy. And this guy gets no punishment?
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. It's really
Honestly,
really
if a
reprehensible.
story comes out in 6 months or so that Bergdahl dies of a quote-unquote suicide by 2 shots to the back of the head, I'd be okay with there being no investigation into that at all. Because that's what he deserves.
Yeah.
I said it right there.
Let's
move
rough
on to
stuff.
this fucking thing.
Let's,
I'm pissed off right now.
Yeah. Let's hold on to your anger, because we're about to go into some your college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment of the show that keeps on giving every single week. The segment of the show where we go over the crazy stuff happening on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because we're the best at it. We got the best crazy college kids here in the United States, full of stupidity. So let's go straight into the first one. We got a story out of the University of Michigan and how they're offering free room and board to students who fight for social justice. So the University of Michigan is hiring 20 different students to promote inclusive language and fight bias incidences in exchange for free room and board. The participants are required to work at least 20 hours per week on issues such as the school's inclusive language campaign, bystander intervention, and follow up with the victims of bias incidences. What do you think of that, Bob?
I wish I got free room and board to waste my time too.
Yeah. And 20 hours a week they're going to be watching for this stuff.
How do you spend 20 hours a week doing that stuff at all? Like, okay, if you've got classes, you probably got about, 12 to 15 hours a week right there. So you're spending more time outside of class doing social justice than you would, like, studying for class too and being in class?
Pretty much like, policing the student body.
And you know what's going to end up happening here?
They're going to, like,
so much time.
monitor people on Facebook.
Yeah, they're going to spend so much time and not find anything. They're going to discover things that weren't supposed to be. They're going to discover things that aren't there.
Yeah. They're going to find dirt on people.
Yeah, they're going to try to find dirt on people. They already know people they don't like. They're going to start digging into them and, like, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if they plant evidence on someone or if they lie about something just to, make sure they're earning that time period there.
So I want to talk about their inclusive language campaign. This is something that they started back in 2015 that we've actually spent on this program $16,000 of taxpayer funds. And they're... They wish to aim to educate students on why certain language can be hurtful to others, and they're targeting words such as insane, illegal immigrant, and I want to die. Good use of $16,000.
Yeah, that money could be, used to pay for a lot of other stuff. So, definitely waste time.
So yeah, this is not the first time we've ever seen something like this on a college campus, like, a school offer things like this, but it is a particularly infuriating instance. And, 20 students are going to get this.
Yeah, so congratulations to them.
They just hired 20, thought police, pretty much.
Yeah. So, let's just move on to the next story here.
Okay. So this next story is out of the University of Texas at San Antonio.
Oh, local school.
So, yeah, local stuff. A bisexual student is in trouble there. Or he felt compelled to transfer schools after a comment he made about the treatment of gay people in Muslim countries, which landed him in a meeting with a department head. So, yes, this student's name is Alfred McDonald. He was speaking with a group of classmates outside of class about religion when another student mentioned she was Christian, but her fiancé was Muslim. McDonald told the student that he did not have a high opinion of Islam because of the religion's attitude towards the LGBT community. Quote, "There are 10 Muslim countries where I could get executed," he told the classmate. He went on to have a meeting with the Department of Philosophy and Classics head chair, Dr. Eve Browning. She told him if it continued, he would be referred to the school's behavioral intervention team or student conduct board, who would either recommend counseling for him or dismissal from the school altogether.
Wow. That's why I chose not to go to UTSA. Where's the lie, though? What did he say that was wrong? Nothing. He didn't say anything that was wrong.
So, He says to her, "I thought that UTSA was a public university with, like, First Amendment protections. So, like, I could be dismissed for stuff like that?" He asked, and she responded, "Those are things that would get you fired if you were working in my office. The Islam comment would get you fired." So,
well, at least that, yet another, professor that has...
he responded, "Would you really get me fired to say that I could be killed somewhere?" And she responded, "In that situation, as you described it, absolutely yes."
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, it doesn't say where he transferred to, but he transferred away because he felt, so affected by what happened.
The thing is, though, is this Eve McDonald, this department chair, there's so many more just like her that are just like, "Oh, you said something that's, hate speech there, boy. Like, you could totally get fired if that was my decision here." And now he's being pressured by pretty much the administration there, by his teachers, or at least the department chair, to have to transfer schools because he fears for his safety. And that's what it comes down to, is fears for his safety.
Yeah.
So, if anyone should get fired, it should be this professor for being such a retard.
Something else.
I hate when people describe people as educated. Just because you are educated does not mean you are smart.
Yeah.
This professor is probably extremely well educated.
In, like, communism.
Yeah.
Though.
But you know what? Not smart at all. In fact, like, pretty dumb.
Yeah.
And I mean that both in a literal and figurative sense. Like,
she might be good at, like, what she specializes in.
Well, whatever she specializes in.
Philosophy.
Probably doesn't need to be taught in schools anyways.
I mean, philosophy has its uses.
I guess philosophy is good, but it's still probably
this lady not so much.
Either way, what you get down to is her salary is a waste of taxpayer money.
It is.
That's the truth.
Let's go into the next thing that we have here, though. There's a professor at Occidental College, which is in Los Angeles. Her name is Lisa Wade. She is an author of a book called American Hookup, and she's a sociology professor there. And she wrote an essay this week that masculinity itself may need to be undermined if feminists are to finish the gender revolution.
What?
Her public book's op-ed, The Big Picture Confronting Manhood After Trump, theorizes that feminists are culpable for Mr. Trump's elections because they have been too delicate in their approach to dangerous ideas.
Too delicate? Fucking people out there assaulting people wearing MAGA hats. How do you be too delicate against quote-unquote dangerous ideas?
Quote, Trump's masculinity is what we call a toxic masculinity, she wrote. In pre-Trump era, the modifier was used to differentiate bad masculine ideals from good ones. Toxic masculinities, some claimed, were behind sexual assault, mass shootings, and the weird thing where men refused to wear sunscreen. But they didn't reflect masculinity generally, so one had to leave that idea alone. But we can only give masculinity so many modifiers for so long before we have to confront the possibility that it is masculinity itself that has become the problem. She posited that rage, self-hatred, and suffering are caused by men who believe they should be superior to women and other men. Quote, if we're going to survive both President Trump and the kind of people he has emboldened, we need to attack masculinity directly. She continued, I don't mean that we should recuperate masculinity, that is, press men to identify with a kinder, gentler version of it. I mean that we should reject the idea that men have a psychic need to distinguish themselves from women in order to feel good about themselves. This idea is sexist on its face, and it's unsettling that we so rarely think of it that way.
I mean, they just want to kill all men. That's pretty much the truth there.
She's unhinged. We need to reject the idea that we can distinguish men and women altogether.
Yeah.
That's just like how we accept reality.
Yeah, men and women are different. Like, that's biologically and socially true.
Yeah.
To pretend anything different is,
Let me finish off the last bit that she has here. In fact, we should be as suspicious of males who strongly identify as men as we of white people who strongly identify as white. We are here in Trump's America in part because we have been too delicate in our treatment of dangerous ideas. The problem is not toxic masculinity, it's that masculinity is toxic. Its appeal is its alluring promise that if we obey it, we can all bask in a sense of superiority over someone. It's simply not compatible with liberty and justice for all. Some really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard to even attack it because it seems just so self-evidently stupid, you know?
And you know what's even worse is, like I keep saying, these people are running your college institutions.
She teaches classes.
These people are teaching your students, brainwashing your students.
She's taught thousands of students similar ideas.
Yeah.
She's convinced students these things that she's talking about right now.
Don't send your kids to college. Don't do it.
College is bad. Want to move on to the next thing I have?
Yeah. Let's move on to it.
Okay. Jesse Daniels, a sociology professor at the City University of New York, CUNY is the abbreviation they use for that, recently argued in an extensive series of tweets that the white nuclear family perpetuates racism. she even asserted that multiracial families can be part of the problem too if the white person fails in dealing with your own racism or systemic white supremacy. So let me read through just the tweet barrage that she sent out. I believe it started with, "What I've learned is that the white nuclear family is one of the most powerful forces in supporting white supremacy. I mean, if you're a white person who says you're engaged in dismantling white supremacy, but you're forming a white family, reproducing white children that you want the best for, how is that helping? And how are you not part of the problem? If you're white, plus forming a family with multiracial children, plus not dealing with your own racism or systemic white supremacy, how's that helping? There used to be a Marxist feminist critique of the family as an inherently conservative force in society, but that seems to have fallen out of favor. I blame marriage equality fight, but it's an important critique for talking about white supremacy. One of the threads running through the Pika Fagan's book, at Always the Self, tweeted out, is about protection of white families. White people are afraid of hurting their family members' feelings if they confront them about racism, and afraid of losing out family members. Beyond just calling out interpersonal racism, white people who want to be engaged in the work need to ask themselves about housing wealth. White people, do you own your home when you die? Where's wealth in that house going? Is it going to your children? You're reproducing inequality. Same with education inequality. Schools in the U.S. are funded through property taxes, which ensure racial segregation continues."
So she's saying that if you build up wealth, and then when you die it goes to your children, that you're reproducing inequality?
You're causing white supremacy.
No. The entire point of, living is to make sure that you leave your children a better life than you have.
And she says here, you're forming a white family, reproducing white children that you want the best for. How's that helping? So in her opinion, if you're a white person and, you have kids that are also white, you are the cause for white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
You just doing, something you wouldn't condemn any other person if they weren't white for doing. Wanting the best for their own, that's insane.
Hey, I want to have children someday, and I want to make sure that when I die that my wealth goes to them so that they can live, normal, decent lives.
But if they're
white... that means I'm contributing to white supremacy.
But if they're white, it's bad. Even if you have multiracial children, Bobby. Even if you marry someone who isn't white and you have mixed-race kids, you still can be causing white supremacy.
Because I'm already white.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, these people are teaching your students. These people are teaching your children.
Yeah, that lady teaches people.
At the City University of New York. So, most of the students there are probably liberal to begin with, but still.
It's crazy.
I hate these people. I really do.
Have to attack the white nuclear family because it helps white supremacy. It's really insane. You want to go into your story?
Yeah. So, the college Republicans at Columbia University are under investigation for a hate crime. The Columbia University student government secretly voted to report the school's college Republicans chapter to the Student Conduct Office for hosting conservative speakers such as Tommy Robinson and Mike Cernovich. The college Republicans president, Ari Boussalis, called the move an effort to persecute thought crime, saying, quote, "They want to silence the speech of anyone who's Christian, conservative, and who believes in free market values." So apparently, because of the fact that they offered to host Mike Cernovich and Tommy Robinson, that was not good. And because it was either hate speech or a thought crime, they're now being investigated because of it. Apparently, they said the resolution was made after Columbia student Braxton Gunter, leader of the school's Black Students Organization, came to the meeting to call for the college Republicans group to be defunded all because they brought 2 conservative speakers. Gunter urged students to support a petition demanding that Columbia University deem our college Republicans ineligible to receive funding and to redistribute their funding to self-identified Muslim groups and people of color-focused groups. Yeah, they want to say, because of the fact that they brought people to speak at the campus that I don't like, you should take all their money and give it to the Muslims and the people of color. Stop giving it to these college Republicans.
They didn't do anything against, like, the school rules.
Oh, but if they had a liberal speaker come to the university and the college Republicans said you should stop giving money to the college Democrats and give it to us instead, they'd tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they should do, but it's probably not since Columbia University is right there in Manhattan.
Okay, so the 2 speakers, Tommy Robinson, he's like a reporter with Rebel Media. He does stuff out of the United Kingdom. He's kind of critical of radical Islam. Like, they have videos of him going to mosques and stuff. That's what he's known for. Mike Cernovich, he's a big presence on Twitter. He kind of has his own media thing. He writes, like, self-help books and stuff. I've read his book, Guerrilla Mindset. It was all right, but, like, he likes Trump, so that's why it's bad that Mike Cernovich talked there. You can't have that. But Mike Cernovich and Tommy Robinson aren't, like, extremists.
No, they're not, especially Mike Cernovich.
Especially Mike Cernovich.
Like, he's right-leaning, but he's very middle of the road. Like,
yeah.
He goes out of his way to make sure he doesn't do or say anything, like, that could be offensive to anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude.
You don't, like, you're talking about the fishhook thing, though.
Yeah.
You don't need to be a radical to be condemned as one. At all. You can just be a mainstream person on the right, and you get attacked as a radical.
Precisely. And, the thing about the fishhook theory is, like, in practice, it's not true. It's all a perception thing.
Yeah.
It's all a perception from whoever is in that circle that it starts off with.
Yeah.
And that's mostly always the far left. Because people on the right know the difference between someone who's, like, a centrist and someone who's, like, a far left, like, progressive. Like,
yeah. But these people live in such, strong progressive bubbles that views that are, to the right of them in the center are very far right because they're so far left. Which, brings them to act so crazy to where they have to go and demand that they're defunded because they brought speakers to the college they don't like. Insane.
Yeah.
Let's go to the last story that we have this week. So, North Carolina State school song has been criticized by their student body president for including the word Dixie.
Jesus.
According to Jackie Gonzalez, she's the student body president there, the song's reference to the winds of Dixie puts a weight on the back of our students of color because it refers to southern states, especially those that were formerly part of the Confederacy, like North Carolina was.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that, Bobby?
I mean, I was born in North Carolina, so that's kind of offensive to me that you're trying to change the song of a school that I don't even go to because it includes the word Dixie in their alma mater. Yeah.
So this was an op-ed in their school paper, The Technician. Let me read some choice quotes from her thing. Though we don't have statues or buildings commemorating Confederate and/or racist people that we know of, we force students of color to sing the word Dixie in arguably the most sacred song that any Wolfpack member, Wolfpack, that's North Carolina, they're called the Wolfpack, members get to sing the alma mater. Your interpretation of the word Dixie might be different than mine. She acknowledges after defining Dixie as referring to the southern states of the United States, especially those that were formerly part of the Confederacy, adding that the term is derived from the Mason-Dixon line separating Maryland and Pennsylvania. Quote, to you, it may mean, it might not mean anything. To you, it might be harmless devotion to our nation's history. To you, I might be overreacting.
Yeah, she is.
To you, this is like such a terrible way to write.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad. But then asks, is a word harmless when it shoulders a weight on your backs of students of color? It is more than a devotion to our nation's heritage. It's etched and effortlessly sung in every area of our university experience. She says she's calling college a breeding ground for difficult conversations and intellectual growth. She encourages readers to ask peers how they feel about Dixie and ask faculty about racial biases, explaining that she wants students to be uncomfortable when thinking about the word and its inherent racist ties. This homecoming season, when I want you to relish the alma mater and the word you sing as you stand next to your friend who is black, Hispanic/Latinx, Native American, or Asian. She instructs, I want you to be uncomfortable and think what this word could mean if you lived with the weight of racism on your back every day.
Really, the weight of racism on their back every day. It seems like white people are the one who are always calling racist. Doesn't mean they should be the ones who have the weight of racism, since all the racism buzzwords are getting thrown at them every day. You know what? How about next time, before you decide what school you want to go to, look at their alma mater, and if it offends you, don't go to that freaking school. Don't go to a school and then try to get them to change it, because you know what we're talking about? We're talking about history here and tradition. You're trying to tear down our institutions, you people. Frankly, I'd say just don't let them go to college.
They're trying to tear down like NC State for what it is. It's a part of Dixie. That's why it's in the song. It's in the South. But you want to like whitewash that so it doesn't offend, people of color. Mm-hmm. Why would an Asian person feel like the weight of the racism of the word Dixie? Why does she feel that it's like harmful to her? It doesn't make sense.
I mean, she's creating herself a victim complex, like we say.
She then asked students to consider whether they are willing to carry the weight of the word by continuing to accept its inclusion in the alma mater song, suggesting the term should be regulated to a museum. Quote, I want you to ask yourself if this word is harmless, if it is history, if it doesn't mean any harm, why can't it be kept in the museums where we commemorate our history? She writes, also ask yourself, do I want this word? Do I want its history? Will you shoulder its weight? The answer you give determines the burden or the lack thereof that your peers and loved ones carry. They're not carrying the weight of the word Dixie.
No, they're not.
They're not thinking about it. They sing the song too.
Yeah, they don't care. They're like, it's my song. I'm gonna sing my song.
And this is the student body president, someone that's elevated.
Yeah.
And she's stupid as... it's crazy.
I don't know.
That got me down really bad. Let's go to the break. We'll come back from the break, and we'll hit you with some international news, and we'll be higher energy.
Yep.
Okay, welcome back from the break. We're going to get into some international news. We're going to start off with the Middle East, and I get the first thing happening out there. So this is something that happened yesterday. There was a Yemeni rebel missile fired over the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. That was taken down by the defense weapons that we sold the Saudis. Mm-hmm. It was taken down over, what is the name of the airport out there?
The King Khalid International Airport.
Yes. So this was a credit to the Houthi rebels. No one was harmed by the attack, but it was interesting that there's a missile fired over them because they've never had that sort of capability. The Houthi rebels there in Yemen that have been fighting, the proxy war between them and the Saudi government for the last couple of years now.
Yeah, and apparently there's a report out that the missile that those rebels fired was purchased from Iran.
Yeah, the Houthis have connections to Iranians. I believe they are Shiite. The Houthis themselves?
I think so, yeah. Because Iran is Sunni.
Yeah, and Iran... No, Saudi Arabia is Sunni.
Saudi
Arabia is Sunni. The Houthis are Shiite, which is... Iran is Shiite as well.
Right.
So, yeah, at least no one's hurt, but... Yeah, the war's getting worse out there.
Yeah, the entire area is starting to escalate. And, you know, in seemingly unrelated news, but it's just very coincidental, the Saudi king decided to start arresting a bunch of people in his own country that same night. In fact, he arrested this one guy, a member of the royal family, Prince Mohammed bin Salam, and he also arrested Al-Wahid bin Talal, who is I'm sorry, I'm reading these names all wrong. I apologize. But one of the guys was a very big shareholder in Citi, News Corp, and Twitter. He was a billionaire. He had over $600 million invested in Twitter, was this guy who did it. Now, also, that same guy owns a significant portion of Four Seasons Hotels. Now, Four Seasons Hotels, keep in mind, owns 4 floors at the Mandalay Bay. One of those floors was the one that the gunman was from in the church shooting. Or not church shooting, in the Las Vegas shooting. Probably just a coincidence, but that's worth noting. But he also arrested, one of the royal family members there, and among a couple other people, like some National Royal Guardsmen, and some people in the naval forces, including a commander of the naval forces there. So it looks like he's trying to purge all these people from himself, which is really kind of interesting. And then what's even more interesting is this morning, before we started the show, a helicopter which was carrying Saudi Prince Mansour bin Merkin crashed. And he, along with 4 or 5 other guys in that helicopter, died. And that crashed near the Yemeni border. So we don't know if that was shot down or anything. But that cannot be a coincidence that he arrests one of his princes and then goes and another one dies in a helicopter crash the next day. Not a coincidence at all. Something's going on over there. Either he's trying to, prevent a coup from happening, or trying to get rid of people
pretenders
disloyal
to his crown.
Yeah. They said that the prince who died in the helicopter crash was in the line of succession for Saudi Arabia. So, interesting things going on there. We know hardly anything besides that. We don't know why these people are being arrested or anything. But, yeah, some interesting stuff. But as of today, and this is from actually just a couple of minutes ago, about 40 minutes ago actually, a Saudi-led coalition has closed Yemeni's land, sea, and airports after that missiles launch. So all of the land, sea, and airports in Yemen are completely closed down right now. The Saudis have closed those down. So, yeah, maybe Saudi's about to attack the Yemen. I don't know. Yeah, just worth watching. See what happens. Because, anytime that stuff happens, we end up getting involved in this crap. So,
let's head on to Asia. What's happening out there, Bobby?
Okay, so the first thing that we have happening in Asia is Donald Trump is heading over there for an 11-day trip. Some say it's actually 12 days, but NBC reported it as 11. So he is leaving over there to go to 5 different countries in a 11-day tour of Asia designed to strengthen diplomatic and economic partnerships while contending with North Korea's nuclear threat. So he said that it was supposed to be 11 days, but the reason why they said 12 is Trump is tacking on an extra day in order to visit the Philippines. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
good stuff, then.
Yeah, so they departed the other day, and they're pretty much just going from country to country, meeting with leaders, talking about them, trying to strengthen our relationships. They'll probably discuss trade, I'm sure, while they're over there. So some pretty good stuff. One of the interesting things, though, is one of the first people Trump met with was Shinzo Abe, the president or prime minister of Japan over there. And they were signing hats that looked like the white MAGA hats with the yellow letters, but it said, "Make alliances great again" on them. And they were signing them.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was pretty cool. And they were both signing them, and then Trump and Shinzo Abe went golfing together, and they fist bumped at each other. And the Japanese media was treating that fist bump video as the greatest thing that had ever happened. There's like buddies out there just fist. Now Shinzo Abe and Trump, they've met like several times now. And
Several times.
Every single time they've met, it seemed like they're like really good pals.
Very positive.
So, we don't really know every single thing that Trump's doing while he's over there, besides like where he's going. I mean, it's countries like Japan, South Korea, China. I think they mentioned Taiwan maybe, but Philippines is one of the ones they mentioned. So 5 or so countries out there. Pretty good trip. He's going to be gone for 11 days, so at least get away from the swamp. And as we talked about in the show earlier, if all that Manafort or Mueller stuff goes down, he's out of the country. If it doesn't go down, then hey, he's just he's out of the country and gets away from all the hubbubaloo of DC. So
yeah,
that's what's going on in Trump land and over there. Now, the second story for Asia is something that's really, really important here. There has been a collapse at a North Korean nuclear test site that's left at least 200 people dead. So this is reported originally by Japan's Asahi TV. They said that there were workers at the Pyongyang test site, which is in northern North Korea, that they've tested several of their nukes at. It's actually a giant mountain. Okay, so picture this: it's just a giant mountain. And what they've done is they've dug tunnels deep into the mountain, and then they set off their nukes inside the mountain. Well, the mountain itself did not collapse, but they said that it's structurally not sound anymore. If they test another nuke, that mountain itself could collapse. And all the radioactive material that's down there, that's being trapped by the rock,
be leaked out.
Will be released. Potentially, it's not going to be as bad as Fukushima was, or as bad as Chernobyl was, but a massive radioactive leak in that could kill thousands of people living in that area. Thank God, though, that the kiloton ratio of those bombs was only 250. Now, that may sound strong, but keep in mind this. The Tsara Bomba, which was the largest bomb ever, and it was made by the USSR, was 50,000 kilotons. North Korea's 250. So you can see that. In fact, I think the ones that we dropped on like Hiroshima and Nagasaki were like 100, 150 kilotons. I might be wrong on that. But relatively speaking, it's about, it's not very powerful compared to the rest of the bombs that we have. Because the U.S.'s strongest bomb that we've ever had was called Castle Bravo. That one was 15,000 kilotons.
Yeah.
Compared to Sarabamba, 50,000, we're talking still about some dangerous stuff here. I mean, they were talking about how, it was actually a Johns Hopkins University study that said that the existing tunnel network under Mount Mantap, that's the mountain in case you're wondering, had substantial damage. So this one tunnel collapse alone killed 200 people. Think about that.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. They said that based on their analysis of satellite imagery, and this is the South Korean South Korea's Meteorological Association, said, based on our analysis of satellite imagery, we judge that there is a hollow space which measures about 60 meters by 100 meters beneath the mountain. Should another nuclear test take place, there is a possibility of total collapse. Chinese scientists have issued similar warnings, suggesting that nuclear fallout could spread across an entire hemisphere if the mountain does collapse. So this is something that's extremely dangerous going on here. Like North Korea just testing their nukes, like this has the potential to kill hundreds of thousands of people if that mountain collapses. And if they test another nuke there, it very well could. So
very bad stuff.
Very bad. This is why it's important that even when they're testing nukes, we put the pressure on them. Like, it's past if that happens, it's well past the point of no return. And at that point, South Korea might have very bad radioactive material being spread across them too. So,
which we don't want.
Obviously, we don't want. So, keep that stuff in mind. Keep a very close eye on what's going on in North Korea. Hopefully, Trump's trip over there will be able to pressure some world leaders into dealing with North Korea better. For the most part, they have been. But, you can always get better. So,
yeah. Let's move on to Europe. I have Europe. The first story that we're going to go into is in regards to the Catalonian situation out there in Spain. As of yesterday, a Spanish judge issued an EU arrest warrant for Catalonia's disposed separatist leader Carles Puigdemont, a day after he failed to appear for questioning over his role in the region's tumultuous independence drive. The announcement added to anger and dismay in a second straight night of demonstrations in the wealthy northeastern region, with protesters chanting and waving Catalan flags. Spanish prosecutors want to charge Puigdemont, holed up in Belgium, with rebellion, sedition, and misuse of public funds. On Thursday, the 54-year-old ignored a summon to appear before the same judge in Madrid. An EU arrest warrant was also issued for 4 other Catalonian ministers who failed to show up and are also thought to be in Belgium, a court statement said. They, like Puigdemont, were dismissed by Spain's central government a week ago. On Thursday, the judge had Puigdemont's deputy and 6 other disposed regional ministers jailed pending a possible trial because of a risk they might similarly abscond. So, the Catalonian officials are definitely not taking, or the Spanish officials are not taking any shit from the separatists out there in Catalonia. They're going after them with their full legal authority that they have. And, this guy's probably going to be leaving Belgium soon, Carlos Puigdemont. I don't know. We are watching the situation. We obviously don't want any fighting. Me and Bobby don't really have sympathy for the Catalonian nationalists either.
Nope.
I don't know. We'll have to see what happens out there. Let me move on to the second story that we have for Europe, and this goes to the country of Sweden. In the last 24 days, Sweden has seen 12 bombing attacks. 12 bombing attacks in a country of around 10 million people.
And this article is actually a couple of days old. It's now up to 15.
Yeah. Earlier this month, the attacks have included an attack on the police station in Malmö, on a multi-family apartment complex, and a car bomb. The most recent attacks that occurred on November 2nd was on a nightclub restaurant in Malmö. The Babel nightclub's front entrance was destroyed by the bomb. There were no injuries to this attack. According to Swedish news SVT, the same nightclub was attacked last year as well, when someone left an explosive device just in the front of the establishment. The police have yet to determine what the source of the explosion was. No suspects have been apprehended in the attacks. So even though there has been an astonishing uptick of bombing instances in Sweden, the Swedish media treats all of them as isolated, rather than acknowledging the big picture that's going on. Sweden's under attack right now, and a lot of that has to do with their massive influx of migrants that they've brought in. Their Islamic migrants that are juxtaposed to what Sweden is.
Diversity is our strength, Enzo.
It's not going well out there at all.
And it's only going to get worse, too, because this stuff has been going on for a long time, but it's just uptick so fast. 15 bombings in pretty much the last month at this point.
Yeah.
How can you ignore that? I mean,
this
really,
gets minimal
really,
coverage in the media
that?
out there. Think about it. How many people are in Texas?
25 million or so?
25. So, proportionality-wise, they had 12 per their 10 million. That would be like having 40 bombings in Texas in a month. People would be going insane
Especially
here.
if they're happening at nightclubs and stuff.
Yeah, and there'd be no way that they could convince the public that these are isolated incidences.
And I tend to think that most of the Swedish public knows that they're not isolated at this point.
They're not allowed to say anything.
But they can't say anything. I mean, we talked about the study about how Americans are scared to share their political beliefs. Think how bad it must be in Sweden right now. I mean, if you speak out against this stuff, you're immediately, boom, you're hauled off into the jail cell.
Yeah.
Or you lose your job, you get fired from your job, you get publicly shamed. I tend to think that most people in Sweden are completely aware of what's going on. They hate it, but they have no power to do anything about it.
Yeah. Really crazy stuff.
We'll retake Sweden, too.
I have family there, so the Sweden stories do get to me, but I don't know, it's not good.
Nope.
Let's go on to North America. So the first thing we wanted to go into is tourism in Mexico is down because of the cartel wars out there. Guests in Mexican hotels have canceled 35,000 booked nights for the upcoming year, as hotel occupancy tumbled 10% this year. The reason is an outbreak of violence near tourist hotspots. Murders have quadrupled in Los Caballos, doubled in Cancun. Authorities in Mexico recorded 2,234 homicides in June, making it the country's deadliest month in at least 20 years.
Yeah, for the first 6 months of 2017, Mexican authorities opened 2,155 homicide investigations, 31% more than in the same period last year. So yeah, it's getting really freaking violent down in Mexico. And I mean, we've talked about this on the show before. If you rank every single country in the planet by how many deaths there are due to war, Mexico ranks 4th.
Yeah.
Behind, what was it, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and then Mexico.
They don't want to talk about that, though, because then it seems reasonable to have a wall that keeps us away from that.
Mm-hmm. And there's another story that goes along with this, and that's that TripAdvisor has actually been deleting people's reviews of these Mexican resort hotels, which talk about like rape and tainted alcohol. They said more than a dozen travelers from around the United States say that TripAdvisor is deleting and muzzling their firsthand accounts of rape, blackouts, and other injuries suffered during vacations in Mexico, according to an extensive investigation published Wednesday by the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And that came 2 days after U.S. officials called on the State Department and the Office of the Inspector General to conduct investigations on Mexican resorts that are serving dangerous bootleg alcohol. So not only is the situation getting worse, but TripAdvisor is deleting people's reviews that are warning others, hey, it's not that safe down there.
It's terrible. Yeah, Mexico gets around $20 billion a year in tourism, and it's projected with the current decline, that's going to be a cut of 0.5% of their GDP.
Jesus.
So that's not a small number we're talking about.
No.
0.5% lost because of the uptick in violence out there. Really bad stuff.
Yeah, so I don't want to go to Mexico anytime soon.
No, my mom has actually offered to go on a cruise to Cozumel.
No.
I don't know. Let's go on to the next story, though. The other story we have out of North America is in regards to Canada. Canada is on track to admit nearly 1 million immigrants by 2020. Canada, with its 310,000 immigrants next year, as part of the government's new plan to raise immigrants intake by about 13% over the next 3 years and admit nearly 1 million newcomers by 2020. Quote, everyone has been of the opinion we need more workers. We need more skilled workers. We need more people to power our economy, address our real skill shortages, address our real labor market shortages, and also address the regional nature of some of these requirements, Immigration Minister Ahmed Hussein said on Wednesday.
Whoa.
If you don't know anything about him, he's
the Canadian Immigration Minister is Ahmed Hussein.
He is a Somali immigrant who is now the Immigration Minister of Canada.
Fuck, we got to retake Canada too.
Now,
I'm going to do the math here for us, all right? Canada's population is only 36.2 million, okay? You follow me here, dog?
Yes.
If they let in 1 million immigrants to 36.2, that's an increase of 2.7% of their population.
Yeah.
So that means out of every 100 people in their population, they're adding 2 more immigrants.
We talked about this last week. 1/5 of Canada is foreign born.
Yeah.
They have the
1/5 of the
fastest...
United States is foreign born, too.
Yeah. They have the fastest rate of immigration in the world, as percentage-wise to their current population.
Yeah.
They're changing the fastest.
Yeah, if you look at like birth rates, how many babies are going to get born in Canada between now and 2020? Maybe 100,000, 150,000. They're letting in 1 million immigrants? Yeah, they're replacing their own freaking population.
Yeah. It's really crazy.
It is really crazy. It's really bad. What fucking Western country puts a goddamn Muslim in charge of their fucking immigration policy? Fucking leaps, I swear.
And he has the incentives. He's a Somali immigrant.
Yeah.
He just wants to bring more Somalis there. Because what are they going to do? They're going to vote for people that serve his interests.
Yep.
And instead of having to appeal to Canadian citizens, you're just going to import new voters. That's what they do here, too. So it's
if
really
anything,
messed up.
what the United States needs to do is make sure that any immigrant that comes to the United States, whether they get allowed as an American citizen, cannot vote.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. It's really crazy, though, and, the media doesn't want this out there, but you look at, the history of how people have responded to immigration across the world.
It's not good.
It's almost completely negatively,
Yeah.
the native populations. It's a very small fraction of any people's perception of immigration historically is positive. The idea that, as I was saying before, immigration is a religion, is we're supposed to not even consider how people have reacted historically to immigration, let alone how we are responding to it now. We talked last week. The majority of Australians want to stop Muslim immigration into Australia. They say the country's full as it is. People are making the similar pleas out in Canada, but their government doesn't care.
Nope.
They have hate speech law there that's just going to throw you in jail if you're critical of immigration out there. So, not good stuff. What do we have next?
I guess next up is Africa. Is the last story we have.
Oh, yeah. Africa is the last thing that we have. We're going to South Africa for our final story, since South Africa has a very near and dear place in both me and Bobby's hearts, being that, we have a friendship with the head of the Saidlanders, Simon Roach. He's been on the show. If you've never listened to our Simon Roach interview, it's probably the best thing we've ever done on Trump Public Radio. The situation out there in South Africa for white farmers is really bad. I can look up some of the statistics. I still have them on my phone. But just going into the story, on Monday, thousands of white farmers have snarled traffic on some major roads in South Africa in what they call the Black Monday protests against the high rate of murders of farmers. The convoys of hundreds of slow-moving trucks and cars brought traffic to a crawl on highways leading from farming areas to Cape Town, Pretoria, and Johannesburg. And white farmers and their supporters wore black in memory of the farmers killed. The protests have been peaceful, and the South African police have accompanied the demonstrators. The protests are backed by AfriForum, a lobby group which promotes the rights of South Africa's white minority, especially the Afrikaner population descended from Dutch settlers. AfriForum claims that 70 white farmers have been murdered in 341 attacks on farms so far this year. The rate of murder of white farmers is much higher than the South Africa's general murder rate. Ian Cameron, AfriForum's head of community safety, said, speaking to the Afrikaners Voortrekker Monument speaking at the Afrikaners Voortrekker Monument in Pretoria, where hundreds were protested. Quote, a farmer has 4.5 times more chance of being murdered in South Africa than the average South African. That means a farmer is 3 times more likely to be murdered in South Africa than a police officer in this country. So farmers have by far the most dangerous job of all people in this country and at the moment. We cannot allow this to continue the way it is.
Yeah, and remember, the per capita murder rate of white South African farmers is the highest per capita death rate of any profession in the world. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up the numbers I have from the second presentation from the Saidlanders I went to. Food for thought. Dangers, multiples. I'm just going to read the slide off.
Okay.
White South African murders by blacks versus Vietnam-era American war casualties. 74,000 versus 58,000. So that's since South Africa, ended apartheid in 1994. So white South Africans have been killed by blacks more in South Africa over a similar amount of time than American soldiers did in Vietnam, which is our most costly of foreign wars we've ever fought. White South African murders by blacks versus Vietnam War active duty personnel, it's about 0.44 times. So what does that mean? It means if you are a farmer in South Africa as opposed to a American serviceman in Vietnam, you're about a correlation of 0.44 to be murdered.
You're just
and these
under
are farmers.
You're
These
just
are
under
civilians.
half as likely to be murdered.
Yes.
Whereas
To be
compared to
killed.
the normal population, that's still like 4 or 5 times more likely than just a regular person is on an average daily basis.
But I'm comparing that to active duty military
In a war
soldiers in
zone.
Vietnam.
In a war zone.
White South African murder by blacks versus black American lynchings. They always talk about lynchings here in the United States.
Yeah.
There has been 249.7 times more murders of white Africans in South Africa by blacks than there ever were black American lynchings.
Jesus.
And the last number that I have here, white South African murder by blacks versus Americans murdered since 1994. 13.7 times the murder rate here. Could you imagine, listener, if the murder rate for, let's just pick some random demographic. Let's say it was Latino janitors were killed 13.7 times the current murder rate here in the United States. You think people would be talking about this stuff?
Of course. It would be on the front page of every newspaper.
Across the world.
Yeah.
This would be an epidemic we'd all be talking about. But because they are a white minority in South Africa, people don't talk about this stuff because white people can't experience racism. Even though you listen to our episodes we've done in the Sadelanders, we did one first right after I went to the New Braunfels speech Simon Roach gave, and we also have the interview with Simon Roach. It's terrible out there and no one's talking about it. So yeah, they protested on Monday what's going on there, and I just want to use my platform with the podcast to talk about the issue once again because it's not talked about, and it's a massive genocide going on right now. Simon Roach, my friend, is back in South Africa now. He came back from his American tour, and I don't like having to worry about whether my friend is going to be killed or not because he's white.
And we are going to put the link to the Sadelanders website in the description of this episode.
Yeah. But with that said, we're done with the show for the week.
Yeah.
We know what the midweek is for this week.
We'll not tell anyone yet.
You don't want to tell anyone?
No, let's not tell anyone.
Okay.
We'll just say that it has to do with the fact that this Wednesday and this Thursday is the 1-year anniversary of the election.
So we're going to have something real good for that. It should be a very entertaining episode. We'll probably have that out on Thursday.
Yeah, we're looking to record it and release it Thursday.
I have people in mind for guests on Sunday, but I can't confirm anyone right now. So we'll probably have a guest on. Other than that, want to just go through the standard stuff we have?
Yeah, go right ahead.
We have a Twitter now. It's at DJT Radio. That'll be in the description. We have our PayPal if you want to help pay for our hosting fees. That's also in the description. That's paypal.me/Trump Republic Radio. And if you want to get in contact with us, you want to ask us questions, you want to talk about coming on the show or something, I don't know.
If you want to do that, I'm
Reach us.
actually going to say, we've been saying email us at TrumpRepublicRadio@gmail.com, but I got to say, if you really want to get in contact with us, send us a message or tweet us at Trump Republic Radio because we'll see it and we'll respond. So
tweet us, or you could use your standard email, which ours is TrumpRepublicRadio@gmail.com.
Yep.
But it's been a fun show. I think we went through a lot of stuff today. A lot of news really to go through.
It's been a long week.
It has been. And with that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Republic Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.